ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some BandLab clips.
Yeah.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out. Kind of.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can scratch. With this AI, like scratching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice. 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.
Oh, it's that time again, Glenn.
Yes, indeed. Time to be talking. Backing away from the camera a little bit. How's that? A little better.
Back yourself up.
Thought I was on the other camera there. Now, with this one, it's a little bit different. Like, I'm all the way back over there. Ooh. But, you also get the keys over here, so that works out well for that. But with that one, bam.
I like that double view that you had going with the bass earlier.
Yeah. That's what this one, when we get the guitar or the bass happening.
Yeah, it almost looked like you had one of those two-headed guitars.
Yep. This one's not plugged in at the moment, but yeah, I was trying to get it. If I get just a little further, I can get the picking hand better down there. Then that'll be a good view there. But I was watching a video earlier on setups for how to set up your SG, and it was definitely covered some good material. We'll look at that at some point. What I like most about it is there's no talking in that video. It was just all going through the actual process of doing the actual work, and just so it looked so beautiful at the end, and how everything was just right, just how it should be. He was going through all the factory specs, how high it should be exactly for each pickup, and how you're checking this, and how you check the intonation, or what order you're doing things. And your very first thing is new set of strings, and then this, and then this, and then this, and just walking through it step by step. I want to say it was about somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes, I think. So it wasn't not a huge investment of time, but definitely well worthwhile. And that would be the other one, is when we're looking at the keys.
Sounding good.
Cool.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of guitar-related videos tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We'll definitely be looking at some of those. Now the bass is what's plugged in right now. So we got that. As long as that's coming in, we're good.
And we do have a bass video for all you bass heads.
Yep. Bass is very important. Get myself situated. It also depends which way we have the which view it is, as to which, like, for this view I got to be a little bit further left over here. Otherwise I'm not quite in the middle.
To the left.
Otherwise I'm like over here, like, yeah. I'm just talking to you're talking to the half of my face. That doesn't work. We'll try it from over here. Or over here, where we see all of me. And a little bit of the artwork as well. Get the AI artwork that was generated some time ago. Just have that running on a loop over there. Keep things rolling along on the side. And we definitely did, trying to think which one would be best to start with. We have several good videos. And
the EQ one, one I think is a great, it goes, it complements like what we were looking at, not last week, because we did take last week off. If any of you didn't catch it, Shinji's contest last Thursday and Friday was phenomenal turnout.
Yeah.
Awesome tunes.
Great submissions, yeah.
Yeah, Maria won.
Yeah. Most excellent. A good time was had by all. And that took, several hours to go through so many. There were so many submissions that we were
Two
thinking
nights.
about doing a show after, but the first night it was just they managed to fill the entire evening with the show because it had so many submissions that were so good. Most excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, very happy with the turnout on that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Getting better each time.
Oh, no, Angie's staring at me again.
Oh, and you got Metal Monday over your shoulder there too.
I always
In the
have
long
Metal
view.
Monday over my shoulder.
Always thinking about Metal Monday. Because who isn't, right? I mean, if it's not Metal Monday, it's almost Metal Monday. That's one way to look at it.
Yeah, count the days till.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, I think maybe you're right, the EQ one is a good one. And I think, did we have two of them for EQ, or we had one that we lined up for today?
The one that I have for the EQ is the 4 magic frequencies.
Right, yeah. For mixing vocals. And I want to say this was Hardcore Music Studio, is that right? I think it is. We'll see.
I think so. Let me see. Yep, Hardcore Music Studios.
Mm-hmm. And this one, there was actually a series of them. This one is 4 magic frequencies for mixing vocals. There's another for mixing bass. There was one for mixing kick drum or for mixing snare, like for very specific instances. And he goes through, and then in this case, it'll just, you'll talk about the reasons why these certain areas are the ones that you would focus on, and give demonstrations of why it's helpful. And I thought it was very good to really focus in on each of the specific sounds in a band and kind of focus in on which frequency ranges are important, because it can really make a difference for figuring out how to mix things, where to master things, or figuring out whether to bring everything else up to this level or to bring this thing down to where everything else is, to figure out the best place to get all your instruments working nicely together.
Wow, we are definitely going to have to check out more of his videos in the future. He looks like he's right up our alley. Look at these topics. Gain staging. This is one I've been getting asked a lot about.
Yeah. Very important. I mean, one of the first things, because if you can get the gain staging right, then everything else from there flows so much more easily.
Oh, quantizing drums. Top 10 plugins for metal. I like this, dude.
It was a recent find for me, but when I found it, it was I started seeing more of the videos coming up, and when I saw that theme of the different magic frequencies for each of these specific situations, it just seemed like such a good thing. So it definitely some great stuff in here.
Wow, he really does cover a lot of different. He's not just covering drums and metal drums in general. He's going after like the snares and individual drums.
Yep, and that's the other thing is getting, even if it is just the snare and the kick, if you really focus on getting those right, and I mean really right for the way that they actually sound and where they're presented in the mix, then everything else just flows so much better from there, because everything else can fit so nicely into that whole pocket that they're building, basket that they're building with that.
Yeah, and these are all the things we're constantly talking about, like cleaning up muddy guitars.
Yep. That's the other thing, is specific situations that happen in the real world is the other thing that's good. It's not all just, oh, here's a book I read on whatever and spewing it out. It's this is how you do this specific thing that a lot of people ask about, because it's a common thing that comes up.
Yep, this is a good find.
Mm-hmm.
Hardcore Music Studios.
Yes, indeed.
At exactly like it's spelled, off of YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's take a look at that.
All right. That one is right over there.
I've got it here.
All right, mixing vocals. Now, I know every singer is unique and every voice is different, but when it comes to EQing vocals in the mix, there are certain spots in the frequency range that pretty much work every time in every song with every singer. So in this video, I'll show you exactly where to start when it comes to boosting with EQ on your vocals. And generally, I don't cut with EQ when I'm mixing vocals, but there is one problem area that you might want to watch out for. I'm going to show you these EQ moves in action in a session, so let's dive in.
Everybody here is running away from...
Now, I'm just going to get rid of the plugin I'm using for EQ so we can start over. Now, the first frequency you want to look at boosting is 8K with a shelf. Let's check that out.
Away from themselves, believing
So it's starting to sound better already in just a few seconds. Now this 8K range with boosting with the shelf, this is that radio ready polish and brightness that we're used to hearing. Now if you find yourself boosting 8K, if it sounds a little harsh or a little hard on certain vocals, you could try boosting at 10 or 12K with the shelf instead, but it's going to be a little more airy and less present. But 95% of the time, I'm just boosting 8K and I'm not afraid to use a lot of it. All right, the second place you want to look at boosting is about 4.5K.
Away from themselves, believing that life is now fair, I'm okay.
And this frequency range is more for the intelligibility of the vocal, that definition, trying to make the words and the consonants really pop. So you'll hear just with those two quick moves, it's starting to come out and be more up front now, but we still need more mid-range to help this cut through the mix and stay right up front. Now the process for this is to start around 1K, do a nice boost, and then start moving around between 1 and 2.5K and find the spot where the vocal just starts to jump out of the mix.
Everybody here is running away from themselves, believing that life is now fair, I'm okay. Feel much better up this way, I'm okay.
So I'm finding right there around 1.7K, it's starting to pop out of the mix a little bit. It's sounding a little more upfront without being too harsh. So let's dial that in.
Everybody here is running away from themselves, believing that life is now fair, I'm okay. Feel much better up this way, I'm okay. So much better.
Now after boosting that frequency, I feel like we need a little more brightness still.
Everybody here is running away from themselves, believing that life is now fair, I'm okay.
Now with this 1 to 2.5K boost, every voice is different. This is really the area that changes more from mix to mix and voice to voice. But generally the more aggressive the mix is, the more heavy the band is, the more of this 1 to 2.5K area you're gonna need in the mix. And that's a tip you can apply across the board in your mixes. If you want something to be upfront and poke out of the mix, well, the frequency range you wanna look at boosting is around 1.5 to 2.5K with any instrument. That's the upfront frequency. Please make sure that you're doing these EQ moves in the context of the mix, not in solo, because if you're doing it in solo, then you're not going to find the right frequencies that help it contrast and stick out of the mix, and also you're probably not going to push them far enough. And if you want to make sure you remember all these frequencies I'm talking about in this video, I do have a free mixing cheat sheet that I made for you. It's at mixcheatsheet.com. It's got all the go-to starting points listed out there for mixing vocals and also for all the other instruments in the mix as well. So just go to mixcheatsheet.com if you want to grab that. All right, at this point, notice that I haven't made any cuts with EQ on the vocal yet. And contrary to what a lot of other people will tell you, I almost never cut with EQ on a vocal track. It's something that I used to do a lot. I try to find the nasty resonant frequencies in the mid-range and stuff, and then I dip them out. But what I would find is I wouldn't have anything left. I would take away all of the magic of the vocal. And so if you grab an EQ and start sweeping a narrow boost around the mid-range and cutting out any frequencies that jump out, well, what will actually happen is you'll remove everything that is actually unique about that vocal. So I'd rather just leave those mid-range frequencies alone, maintain the character of the vocal, and instead just add more of these high-mid frequencies and high-end frequencies to get it to cut through the mix and make it bright enough. Now with that said, there are rare occasions where I will make a small cut in the low end, which is almost always a low shelf dip around 200 hertz. So let me solo the vocal so you can hear this.
Everybody here is running away from themselves, believing that life is now fair.
So that's an example of where in solo, that little dip actually sounded nice. It kind of cleaned up and clarified the top end, got rid of some of that low end woofiness. But in the context of the mix, I think it's actually too thin now. So I would leave that in.
Everybody here is running away from themselves, believing.
I wanted to show you that though, because sometimes there is too much low end and woofiness and low end buildup in the vocal. And I find that just putting a low shelf at around 200 hertz and knocking it down like 1 to 3 dB will clean that right up. But I only do that after I try boosting these other frequencies, because you don't want to go thinning out your vocal if you don't need to. Maybe you just needed some more brightness in top end. All right, here's our vocal after these EQ moves now.
Everybody here is running away from
Now this song also has some scream vocals, and I'll show you really quick that I'm using the exact same frequencies on those. So we've got 8K, around 4K. This time we ended up at 2K for that mid-range boost. And then we are actually dipping out some low end here at 200 on this scream. Sounds like the guy was right up on the mic, so we have that proximity effect that we dip out. Just to prove to you that these magic frequencies will work on almost any vocal, let me show you this on a completely different style of song. Here it is with the EQ totally zeroed out.
We all knew these days will come. Can't seem to stop the rain, ease the pain.
There's the AK, don't be shy.
We all knew these days will come. Can't seem to stop the rain, ease the pain. Bunny dares that she's the setting sun eclipse. We all knew these days will come. Can't seem to stop the rain, ease the pain. Bunny dares that she's the setting sun.
Voila, check out this before and after.
We all knew these days will come. Can't seem to stop the rain, ease the pain. Bunny dares.
All right, so there's your magic starting points for EQing vocals. Remember, starting with an 8K boost with a shelf, then going down to 4.5K for that definition in the vocal. Then to help it cut through the mix and stay up front, you want to boost between 1 and 2.5K. And if after all that, the vocal is still a bit woofy and boomy, then you can use a low shelf around 200 Hertz and clear it up with a dip around 1 to 3 dB. All of these frequencies are written down for you on my mixing cheat sheet, which you can grab at mixcheatsheet.com. And one last thing I want to reiterate is that you want to make these EQ moves into a compressor. And also after you've added all this top end, you're going to need to do some de-essing and a few other moves to get this vocal sitting properly in the mix. So if you want to learn how to properly follow up this vocal EQ with dynamic control in the mix, click here and check out this next video.
Yeah, lots of good material there, and lots of good videos on that channel in that context.
A lot of good tips there. I like his top-down approach with the EQ like that. Start with the 8K.
Yep.
And smooth it out. And if you do need to do anything on the bottom end, it's usually to fix that tinniness or that mush.
Or take out the woof, yeah. One thing I would wonder is on the scream vocal there, if you take out that low end on the scream vocal, you're taking out some of the like some of the stuff that would be probably lower than where you would put a shelf, but it's hard to say, I guess.
And you saw how he adapted to the singer going a little too close to the mic and fixing it post.
Yep, exactly. And again, you can fix it somewhat post if it's not too bad, but you can if the effect is there. If it's not clipping. If somebody is really up in there, then you would have problems even getting that normalized back out.
Yeah, and that's a typical problem with metal vocalists.
Yeah, some have great technique and everything else, and I've seen some vocalists who not even metal vocalists, but just people singing, let's say rock, regular rock vocals, and some of them are really right up on, like lips, touching the mic at the whole time that they're singing, and they're back and they play guitar, and then when they're singing, they're up on the mic, but they're not screaming into the mic. They're just singing at a reasonable volume, but right in the mic, so there's no problem getting them dialed in. Whereas some singers, they sing way back here. And then if there are monitors in the room, a lot of times you will get some feedback going on because you're trying to boost them up a little bit more, and then all of a sudden you start getting some feedback because you're not getting a strong enough signal from them because they're so far away from the mic.
Yeah, good singers know how to adjust their projection to the distance of the mic,
and know when to back off the mic.
Yeah, the really great ones don't have to get straight up into the mic because they project more when they pull back.
Yep. And again, it depends on the style of music. It depends what you're going for, but.
And the mic you're using, a good singer gets to know their mic. They gets to know the dynamics after a couple of takes. You know exactly where you want to be.
It's also a good thing about having like a template, for example, to start from. You not necessarily have a template and you're just done, be lazy about it. And, oh, here's the template. So you're the singer, you're the guitar player, you're the, whatever. Everybody's got their channel and it's already set up. It's a good starting point. Like, it's a great to have a starting point like that. And a lot of times, if everything was just flat on the way in, with the Personas board, what I like is to just, just immediately by saying, okay, that's a bass. So go to the bass channel and just, go and select and load the profile for a bass, and it automatically sets up the EQ and a limiter if it needs it, a gate if it needs it. Like, for each thing, it'll set up a whole profile based on this was what I would do for a bass guitar, and it's somewhere to start, and then you can always tweak it from there. But it almost immediately sounds at least somewhat better, and most times a lot better.
It starts off in a good spot to
Right.
tweak.
As long as it was a good signal coming in, and that's where having having good instruments, having good connections, and not having a lot of BS in the way, just the instrument coming straight in and then taking it, or if it's a guitar instrument going, if they're going to use effects, that's fine, but get whatever signal they're going to get into their amp, and then get that immediately, a mic right on the amp, or take the direct out, depending on what you're doing. Again, same with keys.
I really like the EQ he was using there. That was Pro Tools, right? He was working out of.
Actually,
Looked like it.
I wasn't even paying attention. I would have to see it again.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's like their native EQ. It had a couple of extra options you don't always see in the EQs. I saw a gate in there. And
A lot of times they'll try to use
Dynamics.
just stock pieces or stock, plugins when they show things like that, just so that everybody has access to that, rather than using a fancy one. That they paid a whole bunch for, and use that one. They'll
Yeah,
use the ones that
was
anybody has access to.
That was a little more fancy of an EQ compared to, like, some you'll see it where it's just highs, mid, lows, and you have very few dials, which is a good way to start, because EQ can be intimidating when you're first getting used to it.
Yeah.
But once you are used to it, that kind of EQ with the added dynamics and gating and the extra little bit of options really can be powerful.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Definitely a fan. And again, so many good topics on that site, and so many good videos there that we've just started to scratch the surface. And that mix cheat sheet is something that I thought I forgot to download it when I saw it the first time. So
grab that.
I definitely need that. Yeah. Just because, even again, just to reference it and see which things are like, oh yeah, of course that makes sense, and which things are like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So there's going to be some of both on there. So.
Oh, I'm gonna go
good to
through
see.
his playlist like it's candy. Like,
Yeah.
all those different topics are right up my alley.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a lot of good stuff. We'll have to look more into that.
And,
Now we were
I-
also
I like a YouTube channel that like focuses on metal mixing, because until I met Jason, metal mixing mystified me. It's a really hard genre to mix right.
Yeah. And we were just talking about, the workflow and the workflow that he uses in Reaper, and just seeing it happen. It's like, wow, it's like magic to see it like come together like that, because it really is just, so much of what I do when I'm doing stuff is just, do this step and then focus on that step and then focus on that step, where in a lot of cases he's just, he's just doing the process, and it's like the steps are just kind of flowing in so quickly that it's, not even part of the process. It's just, one whole thing instead. It's cool. And that's a lot of practice. I mean, he does, he works on songs pretty much every day, seems like. So, I mean, that's, dedication to the craft, indeed.
Yeah, he's in automatic mode sometimes. Like, he's leveling and smoothing those tracks as he goes. And me, normally, like, I'll be mixing, after you get everything together, get it kind of glued and where you want it to be, and then you start mixing. Him, sometimes, he's just like, slaps up another track, gets it right to the sweet spot, and jumps to the next one, and he's like mixing as he goes.
Yeah. Or even building tracks as he goes, like take this piece from over here and bring it over here, and then this piece over there, bring it up here, copy that over here, stretch that over there.
That's the
So,
stuff that makes me really want to like use Reaper more. When I see him just like grabbing tracks, splitting them, and putting them into other chains like that.
Yeah. And again, I think one of the factors is the fact that he is not using an i5, and we are using i5s. So that is definitely a factor at this point. When I got my machine, it was definitely ahead of the curve, but at this point, it is definitely way, way behind. So been in need of an upgrade. So I'm looking into it.
Well, if you do run across like any burping in those situations, freezing tracks is a useful way to get some of that power back. I've
Yeah.
started doing that with my BandLab uploads, because now that I'm doing the stems, you know, I'm putting 10, 12 tracks in sometimes, and I've had, you know, a few users who are trying to fork from their phone, like Vegan Zombie.
Sure.
His phone couldn't keep up with the 12 tracks that he was trying to sing to, so I consolidated them for him, and
That's where a mix down can help. Sure. I've
then
had that happen also for bass.
I thought about it afterwards, and with BandLab now they have the freeze track option.
Yep.
So now when I do my uploads, I freeze the tracks afterwards. So if you guys want to change any of the stems in my projects, you got to unfreeze the track to adjust.
Right.
But they'll take a lot less of your CPU power.
And that's the other thing, is that I tend to not really put a lot of effects on anything until like the very end of the process. So for the most part, like, you know, if I was sending something around for everybody to work on, it wouldn't be the final effects on each instrument. It would just be a nice, clean representation for each one, and a decent mix where you can hear what everything is doing.
Yeah.
Rather than getting all bogged down in the weeds, let's say, about, you know, all the effects and what to put on where and what starts to clash with what and where you're going to put what in the sound space and all that. You know, not kind of worrying about that until we have all the parts, you know, solid, and then, or at least a representation for the parts, because it could be, oh, there's, you know, there's a part in there, but there's mistakes in the guitar part or in the bass part or whatever. It's like, well, is it a good enough timing-wise representation of the part that we can utilize it to do, you know, we can redo that part, no problem.
A reference track.
Right, it's a reference track. Is the rest of the track working around it? And if the answer is yes, then, you know, I would leave it there and work with it from there, and then we can always just replace that one track and, you know, worry about the effects after the fact again.
Oh,
It's fact after.
One other good point that he brought up was when you're EQing like that, to not solo the track, but hear the effect of the
In
EQ
context.
in the mix.
Yeah.
Because if you EQ on a solo track, you're not getting the reference of that track to the mix the way you
Sometimes you might need to do both. Depends how much work the track needs, you know, or how, you know, how much help it needed and why it needed the help. Like, are you only tweaking it because it was having a problem in the mix? Like, was it not cutting through, or was something stepping on it, or was it stepping on something? And in those cases, that's where you're going back and forth between the soloing and the not soloing can be helpful. So it's not like you can't solo the track, but it's just important not to just use that as the only reference. That's the,
Yeah. In this case, you know, he was dealing with vocal tracks where that is good advice, because, you know, vocal tracks, how you mix them with the rest of the instruments is a different EQ process than, say, oh, I've got these drums and I'm trying to EQ them to clean up the cymbals or something. Drums you could solo and clean up with the EQ a lot easier than if you're dealing with vocal tracks.
Yeah. And again, just even a few little tweaks, and that's where he has the different videos for, you know, the snare drum and for the kick drum, and like he's got the magic frequencies for each. So if you were working on a track that you had like one track that was like, oh, this is gonna, you know, this is my big track. Let me sit down and like I'll look at each and every single track, you know, like a surgeon. You like take each track and you want to make it just right, get it just where it should be in the mix. I mean, technically you're trying to do that on every track that you're doing. But if it's, you know, you're really, really trying to get it just right, you know, you got to make sure that, you know, the effects are all good. And that's where, again, I always start the cleanest we can and worry about the effects towards the end, the stereo spread and all that. That's the tip somebody was giving about mixing in mono, so that you're not really as worried about the stereo space. You're not hard panning things yet. You're just getting things to where the sounds are represented. And when you're hearing it, even with everything dead center on top of each other, your ear can still pick out each of the instruments, so that you know that everything has enough volume to be represented in the mix there. And that's when you start looking at what's stepping on what, or what needs to come through more.
Yeah, that was another great tip when he was going through the frequencies and what was it, the 4K, where he was saying, you know, this is where when you want to boost something and bring it to the front, which is, you know, another thing when you're mixing, especially vocals, like when you're hearing the mix and it feels like the vocals aren't in the front on top where they're supposed to be. That's the frequencies you kind of want to focus on to just bring it where it needs to go. Because EQing to me is boosting. That's how I think of it. You have all these different ways you can boost tracks, but not all boosting techniques are created equal. Turning
And
up the levels is not my ideal way of boosting.
right. And
EQing,
he did mention there's also that you can cut, but he doesn't usually cut on, on the vocal tracks. But there are situations where you might need to, like, if you're getting a big woof or a boom or a spike happening or, feedback happening in the room, but all that kind of thing is the kind of stuff that you'd be trying to figure out before you got to the recording part. Ideally, you're not dealing with that with the tracks once they're in there. But it depends, sometimes people send you all kinds of stuff, so it all depends.
That's one thing I appreciated from the advice he's giving. When it comes to EQ, he emphasized boost. We're doing this to boost. We're doing this to boost. That's what EQing really serves.
Yep.
I mean, sometimes you're smoothing the frequencies, but when you are giving it more gain on those frequencies, you're boosting it.
And I did like the, I think you said between 1K and 2.5K in that whole range, or between 1.5 and 2.5, riding through there to see about that boost, to see where, something starts to cut through, because that makes a lot of sense. And being able to see that, it changes for the different people, and it changes on the mix that you're trying to cut through, where that little window would be where you suddenly would jump out, because there should be some frequency in there. There shouldn't be people stomping on everything everywhere,
Yeah.
You just got to find that little spot where you can just kind of poke through and then be the only thing there. And okay, leave that boosted, and that'll allow that to kind of poke through right there. With, again, the overtones and the fact that whatever note you're singing, some part of your voice will be represented in that area, even if you're singing a lot lower.
That was a great find on YouTube.
Yeah, I like it. Good stuff. And we'll look for more tips there much later as well. Solid foundation, right, Jake? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can see him being spotlighted regularly.
Definitely. We will do that. Now, we have several other videos for today, and the question was if we wanted to jump right into another one, or if we wanted to do anything else in the meantime. I'd be fine with jumping to another one if you want.
And some of the other ones we have are becoming regulars. All David.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, ironically, I actually was searching for something and just happened to find his video in what I was searching for, guitar to MIDI.
Nice.
For actually different reasons. I'm trying to find some plugins to simulate natural guitar with the keyboard. But then I went down the rabbit hole and started looking at guitar to MIDI conversion, and you have two choices. You either get a hardware MIDI guitar, which is the ultimate choice. I mean, you're going to get real-time actual guitar translation to MIDI. And if you like your axe and you want the feel of the real guitar, but you want to send it to MIDI, nowadays you've got plug-in options that will take normal guitars and make them MIDI controllers. So it's nice to have all these options.
Yeah. And that's the thing is something like Melodyne, like for drums, when we were talking about Melodyne, the drum replacing, just having, you've got the hits represented and you can just replace them with whatever you want like that. Not as easy to do with guitar, but technically you can do a lot of stuff with guitar and something like Melodyne in order to be able to represent and get the notes in there. But yeah, I'd love to see what he's got over here.
Yeah, Melodyne's another one that in the upcoming weeks I'm doing some big research on.
Nice.
They've got a new version of it and it's getting better and better.
Yeah.
So let me get this Paul David.
Hey, Del Montre. We actually aren't taking links tonight. We're doing a show where we're talking about IT stuff and showing some videos. Nice. A MIDI emulator that turns your voice into MIDI instruments. That sounds like something right up
Yes.
a lot of people's voice. Yeah.
And that's where Melodyne comes in handy because, I mean, unless you're trying to do it live, it's trickier with trying to do it live. But if you have a vocal track and you want to convert it to MIDI, that's what Melodyne does.
And what it sounds like he's also talking about something similar to what Soulmake was doing. He's using his voice to represent each of the instruments, but in this case, more directly.
Yeah, with the P5.
Yep.
So this is one that, like, we've been to his site several times on our
Oh,
show.
yeah.
He's got
Paul's got great stuff.
fantastic videos for everything.
One of my favorites is on a funk. He's got just a little, you know, quick intro to funk thing, just going from nothing to building up into a little funk rhythm. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and he's a guitarist-friendly YouTube site. I mean,
Oh,
for
yeah.
all you guitarists out there, there's just videos up the yang to enjoy.
I remember, I believe I saw one a couple weeks ago where he was comparing 4 different price ranges of guitars, where it was like the cheapest guitar and then working up to like the $50,000 guitar, but they were all the same, like the same Stratocaster, but just, you know, the very cheapest one you could get, and then going all the way up to like the wah, the
Well,
one that you know, there's no way you'd get.
You remember
did.
that one we saw of like the most advanced guitar out there?
Yeah.
Well,
I was showing the video to somebody the other day with the Relish guitar.
I thought
the
that
ones where you can
guitar
pop the
was,
pickups out.
I thought that guitar was really cool, but this one, I want this one way or another. I'm gonna get my hands on one.
Look out, Angie's behind you. Look out.
See, oh, she's giving me the scrunchy face. She's like, play the video.
There you go. Hi, Amy. How you doing?
Hey, Miss Amy.
We've got Paul David's going right here.
Yeah, so this is Paul David, and he's talking about a true MIDI guitar. What we're going to see here, this guitar has MIDI pickups, and even cooler, it has a touch screen on the bottom. that
Nice.
Does some wild stuff.
Very cool.
So this guitar blew his mind and mine.
Excellent.
I did it! I found the best tone ever. Listen to this. That's a bass. This guitar, it is wild. It is super high tech, but at the same time it makes things so much easier. So it kind of looks like any other guitar, but as you might have noticed, there's some little extra. So we've got the pad here in the back. We've got this little joystick over here. There's even a screen on top, all the knobs, and there's not one, but 3 cables coming in. The craziest and best feature is something you cannot see, but it's a thing I'm dreaming about for 15 years, and they call it a groundbreaking fretboard scanner, and it might do something like this. Hold on, not so fast. So here I've got the Expressive MIDI Pro 2, built by a small company in Ireland by Rob O'Reilly, and thank God this guitar just sounds like any other guitar. Really unsurprisingly, we've got that classic guitar sound we all know and we all love. And actually, I really do like the sound of this guitar. And there's also a piezo pickup for those that like that sound. It's not for me, but I mean, if you love it, it's there. It plays great. I think this guitar could be anyone's main axe, really. But there's more. So let's start with the most eye-catching feature, the XY pad. XY because, like, remember math, there's like 2 axes, the X and the Y, and both can control a parameter. You can just touch it with a finger or with a pick and it picks it up super quick. So I got it hooked up with a good old MIDI cable to the hologram electronic microcosm and the Chase Bliss Maris CXM 1979. And this might blow your mind. So I'm actually controlling the knobs and the parameters of the delay, of the reverb and of the overdrive pedal in real time with the volume pod or just a pod over here and the XY pad, and it's super cool. So for example, when I was playing the lead and I want a little bit more gain, I just use this button to dial up the gain, and you see it moving over there. It's great. So I'm using the pedals with movable faders right now because it's just easy to see for you what's happening. But there's loads of different pedals that all use MIDI. It's a super universal system, so a lot of pedals will accept the commands coming out of this guitar. So really the sky is the limit here, and I think that after you set it all up, of course, which might take some time, it's a great way to be close in touch with the sound you're playing with. Make micro adjustments on the go without having to shoegaze, for example. But you really have to think about what parameters you want to control. Like, I think the most obvious things would be like a mix or a filter, repeats on a delay, mix on a delay, the gain on an overdrive pedal, that kind of thing. That's really handy and will always be awesome, and it's super usable. So I told you about the hidden features of this guitar, right? Actually, what's coming now is, I guess, like the main feature of this guitar, and bizarrely we didn't talk about it before. But anyway, I'm just so excited. I forget a lot of things. This guitar can sound like any instrument you ever dreamt about. For example, this guitar is called the MIDI Pro guitar because it just sends all the notes you play as MIDI notes to whatever accepts it. It can be a hardware synthesizer, your computer, anything. And anyone knows what is happening right now, knows this is exceptionally well done. Also how it responds to bending notes. It does so with that so-called groundbreaking fretboard scanner. It knows every note you play instantly and sends it over via the MIDI protocol. The guitar is available from 2,990 euros, which I think is a totally competitive price point considering how much R&D had to go into building this guitar and how feature-packed it actually is. And there's multiple ways to trigger the notes with just picking the strings like this, or with tapping on the XY pad. It works well with strings. Or with the finger pads. So there's 6 strings, 6 pads. So this really dropped my jaw. What I showed before with the controls, it's awesome, but it's just like a control built into a guitar. And I've seen it before on guitars like Matt Bellamy, for example. He used the Chaos pad to control several parameters. This is even more, but also it has that MIDI functionality of the notes, just playing the note. And the guitar tracks the note bizarrely well. Just like have a listen how clean it picks up the notes. Right? That's crazy, right? So I have played MIDI guitars before, but to be honest, nothing like this really. So you do have to play the notes neatly. Like if you play scales, for example, it works really well. Or single lines. But if you play more funky based lines, like you know, it sort of goes all over the place because it just doesn't understand what on earth your hand is doing. So one of the coolest things is, like now I'm playing in regular mode where you just pick the notes with the pad, with the pads or with the pick. But there's also
the tap mode.
And this is next level. So now we can just play the notes by tapping on the fret. And it works really accurately. So, that is pretty sick, right? And I've got a filter to this knob. So a big problem with this kind of tech has always been latency. It's the moment between when you press the note or play the note and when you actually hear it. And this guitar has an adjustable latency setting. You can actually flick through the settings and find 2 milliseconds to 5 milliseconds and even higher. I don't know why anyone wants higher, but 2 milliseconds is extremely fast. So this time I'm just keeping it at 2 and it delivers like, it is super accurate. Of course, there's also the latency of the instrument you're using. So I'm running it in Ableton Live right now with a buffer size of 128, which gives me, I think, 3 milliseconds. So in total, it should be like 5, which is really usable. There's now just one USB cable plugged in going straight into the computer, and this guitar just sends information about the notes, like the length, the duration, the start, like if there is some sort of expression going on. It goes through the cable into your instrument or your computer, and your synthesizer will immediately play that note that it gets from the guitar. You can octave up and down. You can use your joystick. So sometimes there's just an anomaly. Sometimes it doesn't play the note. Could be dirt on the guitar or sweat from my sweaty hands of the stress of recording this video. That's impressive, right? So actually, the more I think about it, the more I get excited about what's possible with this guitar. Like MIDI is such a universal language. It's for music instruments, it's for computers, it's a bridge between everything. This guitar could potentially be like the brain of the entire operation, like eagerly waiting to give instructions to whatever you want to say something to. So when Rob reached out and told me about this guitar, I got really excited because something like this has been on my wish list for so long. And seeing it in action, like it really delivers. It is really what I hoped for, but I'm sure this isn't for everyone. For example, when setting up the guitar to control the guitar pedals, the parameters, you do really have to look into the manual. So I had all these manuals lying around for all the pedals. What MIDI number is that parameter? Like, what channel are they on? And for those that already worked with MIDI before, I guess it's really a piece of cake. It's just super intuitive. But if you don't enjoy that part, if you don't like it, or you don't even know MIDI existed before this, I'm not sure this is like the best way, because you probably don't even need it. Also, you have to like be into synthesizers or like love to work with computers and plugins, because that's where the guitar really shines. So preparing for this video, setting all the pedals up, preparing the live set with all the different instruments, it took like 2 days, I guess. Not full days, half days. To make sure it all worked like how it should be. MIDI is super stable. It's been around for so long, and it will be for so long because everyone uses it. That said, I had some quirks, but that might also be the pedal. I had some issues with the blooper. I was recording the video just now, and I wanted to control the blooper with the joystick, turning the mods on and off. So you can do like, blah, 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 blah. You can get really creative with that. But then it just stopped working, but only on the blooper, because when I switched to different pedals, it worked again. Don't want to blame anyone, so I'm just keeping that in the middle. But to be fair, I guess the guitar wasn't really designed to adjust pedals like that. It was just something that really immediately created a spark, like in my imagination. What can we do if we could control every parameter in each pedal, which is the guitar? That would be awesome. No, endless fun, right? But that is just me. The guitar is aimed, I guess, more at folks that want to play with MIDI instruments, like not using keyboards, just want to play the synthesizers with the guitar. And that is huge. That is so great. So having the guitar for a few weeks, I actually used it in many of my projects already. For example, in my previous video, the lo-fi, where I played the melody. So I played the melody on the guitar, but I wanted to harmonize it with some bells, with some strings, and sometimes relearning a part on the keys, it just takes a little bit longer. Don't even talk about like drawing in MIDI notes. That's just tedious. I don't do that ever. So learning a part on a piano, I mean, I can play a little bit piano, but like not as good as guitar. So I rather just play it on a guitar and track a bell with the guitar. Or why not track a stringed instrument with the guitar? It makes so much more sense. You can do all the slides, you can do all the vibratos super naturally, and it sounds so much more natural instead of playing it with the keys, right? So I had a lot of fun using the guitar for that. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you. Do you see yourself using an instrument like this? Like, did I miss maybe some super creative way to use the guitar, or like a very obvious way? Do you think this might be a solution for guitarists that just don't want to learn a piano? Because let's be fair, playing stringed instruments is so much more intuitive on a guitar than on a piano. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thanks, Rob, for letting me check out the guitar. I might give you a call to see if I can buy it. Have a lovely day, and see you next time. Cheers. One thing I forgot. Check this out. Woohoo! This is my Strat. There it is. A beautiful print on beautiful paper. So we're doing a limited run of 75. Oh my, this is really beautiful. With my cat, mouse, coffee mug, the guitar, all hand signed by the artist. Learn, practice, play, my course. Very cool. So all my earnings will go to charity. So if you want to check it out, it's $135, free shipping in the United States. You can check it out at ziggy'sartstudio.com. Anyway, I think it will look great on my wall. Don't know where yet, but cheers.
Yeah, that guitar is awesome.
And that is why we love Paul David's channel, because that is
next level on that.
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just the controls, and like he's using it more than a lot of people would, but you could still go next level with all of that. I mean, with those, with each of those 6 basically drum pad buttons, being able to be an ebow for each of those strings, or you could just tap on them. You know, you could just go and tap on 2 of them to go back and forth between. I mean, you could get some crazy stuff happening without having to shred your fingers off, whether it's, you know, holding a pick and getting, you know, muscle strain from that, or whether it's, you know, finger style and you're ripping the flesh off your fingers. You could do a lot with buttons like that.
Whammy the shit out of that with that joystick.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Never worry about tune.
And the other question was whether the joystick, if the, you know, I'm assuming it's 3, you know, it's not just left right, but it's left right forward back, kind of like you were saying.
look like a total
Yeah, 360.
directional. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if not, there was also the touchpad where if you were able to touch that and move this direction means this, that direction means this. You could even have gesture recognition. Now that you're able to see what's where. And
Can you believe how those like orchestral strings sounded when he was like using the pad to and his point about MIDI. Yes, if you're a guitarist who gets something like this, you're gonna want to learn the MIDI control events that lend themselves to guitarists, because there's like 12 or 13 MIDI events that are designed for guitar techniques.
Yep. And again, his point about not having to relearn a part on the keys, for a lot of people that's not, they wouldn't consider that an option because they don't consider themselves capable of doing the keys where they are. I mean, everybody is capable of doing it. It's just a question of, sit down and try. Don't be afraid to fail, and just have a go at it and see what you get. Because even if it sounds bad, no one's coming to arrest you for sounding bad. Just play it on lower volume when you're just trying things out, so that you're not torturing your neighbors or whatever.
And if you really can't play the other instruments that you want in your song, like I understood what he was saying from a keyboardist approach. I tried to play guitar and ended up going with a keyboard because it was a controller that felt more natural to me. From the flip side, a guitarist who doesn't want to have to go learn keyboards to play a piano part, this opens up, and I'm amazed that it took this long for MIDI guitars to like get this good, because they back in the 90s I was trying to buy MIDI pickups that Roland had been trying to do back then, but we've come leaps and bounds from those hardware pickups from the 90s were slower than VST solutions.
Yeah.
Now you've got pickups that are like the latency he's talking about here. You're not going to notice it.
Yeah, exactly. And that is mighty fast. Even with a combined 5 milliseconds, still 5 milliseconds, like okay, that is not bad.
And you saw like the one place where he found fault with it was if you're trying to do like funky kind of where the muting and the technique that you're doing doesn't lend itself to the controller that it's trying to be.
Yep.
So for those kinds of things, if you're gonna try to accomplish those with this guitar, you might have to actually change the way you're doing it so that it works with that. It's like when I try to play guitar on my keyboard.
Yeah.
I have to do it through a keyboard approach to get the same kind of sound that a guitarist who's strumming would get.
Yeah. Same thing when you're playing, like you're saying, playing horns on the keyboard. If you're trying to play something where you're, trying to sound like a horn or whatever.
Or get the
get a
horn
little
effects,
bend in there or whatever.
Get that stutz and other things that like sometimes you need to press a button or move an expression pedal so that the horn sounds muffled or
right. And that can be in how hard you hit it also. Like if you hit it really hard, then you actually get a muffled tone or whatever, depending on what the instrument is. They can have different effects on how hard you hit it if you have a sensitive keyboard for that, where which you should, pressure sensitive where it's soft or harder.
And he brought up a great point and feature of that guitar is that all those MIDI controls that you can do are programmable. So if you decide like this song, I need the glissando MIDI effect, and for this song, I want like that touch effect that he was getting when it practically turned it into a Chapman stick.
And that was the one I was going to say when he was having issues with the funk, for example, on the piano.
That's the one where his head blew. I saw you laughing. I felt the same. I was like, oh my God, for real? This does that?
And then once he did that, like that would have been the style of playing and the mode to have the guitar in to try that one when he was trying to do the piano in a funky style, but it was kind of sounding weird because he was using the pick and chugga, chugga, chugga. If he had it in that Chapman stick mode, I think it would have worked out better because then you're just tapping those chords. You're bop, bop, bop. And as soon as you're putting the pressure there, it's registering that note. And it might come out differently that way rather than with the pick attack as well.
Exactly.
I think it was the pick attack that was confusing it.
I have no doubt that like if he used this on a regular basis, I mean, he only got a couple days to play with it.
Right.
If he did and he wanted to do that part and he didn't realize it didn't work the traditional way, he would have taken that kind of approach. Let's try it with the different techniques, and
Yep.
there's always a way.
Yeah, exactly. And again, just seeing the different options there for the strings, the EBO essentially, where you can just have it, touch the screen or hit any of those single individual buttons to get the individual strings. I mean, that's crazy talk. As far as arpeggios, right there, your arpeggio is now just a matter of you're holding a chord shape and just using these fingers, just diddle it, diddle it, diddle it, and just, on any 4 of the strings, and you're just working your way up an arpeggio there. So that would make things so much easier.
Yeah, the EBO sound that he got and the ease of which he got it alone makes me want to spend $3,800 for that.
Yep. Hi there, Loner.
Hey, Loner.
We just got finished watching a video by Paul Davids. And again, such good stuff on there.
The funny thing is that's cheaper than the most advanced guitar, because that one was like 10 grand, wasn't it?
Well, we went the other day on one of the websites to go look for guitars and other things. But when we were looking for the guitars, just starting from like the most expensive and working down, like it takes a while to get down to $3,800. So, I mean, there was a good neighborhood of instruments in that, up to, let's say 15 grand and coming back down. But, you could go spend 100 grand on something. It all depends what you're actually looking for. And, it would mostly be rarity that would get something up to prices like that. Yeah.
Yeah. When they're expensive like that, it's like we only make 10 or 100 of these because there's only 100 people who will pay 100 grand.
Yeah. Well, on Paul's site, one of the videos that if you go to the videos page there, you'd be scrolling through and you'd see one that's got like 4 identical looking, like that Strat that he held up a minute ago, that orange one that he had the picture of. You'll see one of his videos that has 4 of those Strats, and it's like the 4 different right there, 4 different price ranges, and it's like, what are they, 50 or 200 or whatever, up to 50 grand, I think.
See, I love when these guys do those sound comparisons like that. Remember the video we watched way back of the the $1 million Stradivarius and the like $300 one?
Yep.
You
trying to see it.
You do hear the difference.
You do hear it.
Sometimes.
The question is also how, like, if somebody was doing a blind test, not that you want to hand $1 million, something fragile like a violin, $1 million thing to somebody who's blindfolded, but
I
the idea
couldn't
being
believe they gave this guy that Stradivarius for the video to use, because that came out of a museum.
Yeah, and that's the thing is they will, it's all about proper handling and knowing that the person is, an accomplished musician, seeing that they've had, their 10 to 20 to 30,000 hours of playing behind them. They know how to deal with things, but yeah.
That dude was worthy of that Stradivarius like Thor is of his hammer.
Yeah. And even with some of the rare instruments, could even be this, whether it's this $50,000 guitar or whether it was one of the other ones, one of the most rare. He had another one that he played that was, a very, very rare and expensive guitar. I think it was also a Strat. It might have been a Strat that Jimmy played or whatever. There's something special about it. And like at one point, in the video, he's got the guitar. He's like pretending he's going to tuck it under his arm and just kind of run out of the store. He's like, see ya.
Yeah, I was going to say like a Strat.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you have to pay $60,000 unless it was like Jimmy Page's or Eric Clapton's actually?
Yeah, and that's the thing is in the video he might discuss exactly what kinds of differences there are. Now, from the lowest one to the next one up, there's definitely certain differences. Can you see what the price ranges are? Like I can't quite make it out on the.
It's going from 400 to 2,000 to 5,000 to 60,000.
Yeah. So like in that first jump there, going from the lowest one to the next one. Now the lowest, you could find one in that lowest bracket that plays and feels like $1 million. And it might be that you get one that is in that level that just needs some love and some tweaks, which there's a video that I'll put links up to next week. That's for a full setup for an SG. And it's basically, there's no talking through the video. It's just music playing throughout, but it's going through the entire process of a setup from taking all the strings off and putting all new strings on and then doing every one of these specific things for the setup to get everything exactly where it should be. Everything is just, the right height, the neck's got the right amount of bend to it. You've looked at like all the different parts. He's even getting to the point where he's oiling each of the strings at the nut and at the saddles and like, each of just going through like all of that. And it's one of those things that's useful to look at if you've never really given your guitar a setup. And even just something where a friend of mine just got a new Strat. Pepe just got a new Fender Strat. And so when I was over there the other day, I just checked it out, and the intonation was kind of off, and I wouldn't expect it to be on because he didn't get it set up before he just got it. He just got it as it was. So I took a look at it, and it needed just 3 adjustments, 3 of the strings, like the low E and the B, and I think it was the D string. Each one of those was like kind of too sharp at the 12th fret. So like that's again when you check what it sounds like open, and then you check at the 12th fret, and they should be the same exact note. If this one's a little bit flat, this one should be a little bit flat, or if this one's a little sharp, it should be.
You tweaked it up for him?
Yep. And so it's just a tiny screwdriver, and you just reduce the tension on the string, and then adjust it, because you'll see the individual movable saddles where you can bring each one. You can make the string longer or shorter. If it's too sharp at the 12th fret, you need to make the string longer, so you're going to move that saddle back. So you just bring that back a little bit, and then you tighten it back up to tune it back up and see, and you just check each one. And then when it sounds just right, now all of a sudden, what you would have before when it wasn't fixed for the intonation is you're playing a chord low and it sounds fine. But then as soon as you start playing up higher, 7th fret, 9th fret, 12th fret, if you're playing chords up there, they won't sound right. They get further and further out, where it sounds like your guitar's out of tune. But then if you go to tune it, everything's fine. Everything's still in tune, but it doesn't sound right up here. And that's what the intonation being out will do for you. But once you get that fixed, all of a sudden you could play the same chord shape. And again, as long as you have to be gentle with the chords also. If you push too hard, you can bend them sharp.
Does that also affect how well it stays in tune?
That's more about also bending as you tune it. So like as I tune each string or each note, you'll see me like, tune it, get it to where it's just right, and then I'll give it a good tug where I'm bending it up a whole step or a step and a half, to make sure that when I release it and go back and tune it, it's still fine.
Give it some like excess stretch room.
Excess tension essentially. So basically I'm bending, if it's the E string, I'm bending it up to the G, and then back down, and then making sure that it's still an E, and it should be, and it should be fine. As long as I do all of that, then no matter how hard I'm hitting each of the strings, I'm not hitting a string hard enough to bend up 3 half steps unless I'm intentionally bending up that far, which I'm usually never going to do on the low strings anyway. And I would only really do if I'm doing Gilmore bends, on the high strings.
Yeah, if you're doing to that level of bending.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the time, I would sooner do slides, and that's just more of a style thing for me, I guess. I do more slides than I do bends like that. And that's, just a preference. I could do both, but, I prefer.
Well, I think he prefers to do slides more too. When you look overall at, especially his modern performances, he's doing a lot more of the lap slide.
Yeah, it's nice stuff, man. I love the way that sounds.
Oh, same here.
There's a couple bands I work with that use those.
Especially the way he does it, like.
Definitely tasty stuff. It all depends on so much emotion. That's the real thing that comes across. It's not about the instrument either. Like that's where sometimes you see people play a cigar box, or it's a 2x4 with a string on it, but they can get so much soul, so much emotion, from whatever it is that they're playing, because it's not about the gear, it's about the intent and the skills, the skills of having practiced it and being able to get that much emotion come out through the instrument. But getting back to like something like the different instruments he's got there, like that's a really good video for seeing, and he can really tell you what the differences feel like. It might be a blind test, it might be that he just goes through and talks about the differences, because again, sometimes it'll be the binding even along the edges, where like if you would feel the frets maybe on the cheapest one, but then on the next one it's much smoother, and so it feels like you're gliding up and down the neck. And on the next one, it's just the action. Everything is set up just perfectly before they even send it to you. They make sure the intonation is just right, the height is just right, everything is factory perfect, or factory spec, the way it should be, as opposed to the way sometimes they're just kind of slapped together and sent over for the cheap ones.
He does the string test we talked about, huh?
Yeah. At one point, he did a shootout where he did all these different strings, and he was surprised at the end, but with what he got.
Yeah, and me, I'm a curious beast when it comes to that. I've asked guitarists about their strings and their gauges, and whether it's worth the differences you see sometimes, especially if you go through strings a lot.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing with his is that he really does have, he's got a great ear and a great feel, so that as he's going through with each set of strings, he can actually give you comparisons and going through them all one after the other, you can really get a feel, especially if you're playing the same riff or, the same style, the same phrase, like, pick the same piece of the same song and try it on all these different instruments, or, all these different sets of strings, after having them, swapped in and out. And that's the other trick, is having that many instruments around with, to be able to put strings on all of them.
He got to play in a nuclear reactor.
All right.
Well, dude, the reverb you would get in there, he's right. That would be like $1 million reverb.
Nice.
See, that's why we love his channel. You have a lot of variety there.
'80s
Guitar,
intros, guitar types. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, guitarists. This channel was made for you.
We have a couple that we look at with, you know, a couple different guys, but Paul is definitely one of the ones that we like to check out for a lot of those types of videos. I was going to say Stitch Method is another one. We don't have any of his videos today, but we'll
Yeah.
definitely get to him another time soon because he's always got great stuff to check out.
Oh yeah, I've been going back to his site regularly.
Yeah. Oh, does she have the shades on back there, looking over your shoulder?
And the cheetah hat.
She's gonna get you.
Again, she's giving me a stinky face.
She's gonna get you. She's always around. Now we went. I think we started a little bit late today, but we've been going a little over an hour. But we've got a couple different videos out. We've got more coming up, and coming from a few different options. We got one about bass, which we talked about, some funk bass,
Oh, yeah,
articulations.
another regular on here, Scott's bass lesson. That's one we've been checking out almost every couple of weeks.
Exactly. And it's important because, I mean, he's just, again, got so much stuff on there, and there's so many different people that he brings on to get different perspectives because he'll, a lot of famous bass players, a lot of people who you would recognize, and a lot of people who are just flat out awesome, whether you know them or not, like, and the way that they play bass, what they can teach you about bass, just seeing them from their perspectives. Scott's Bass Lessons, I can't recommend it highly enough in terms of not only what is available for free on YouTube to get you started on ideas or even get you through entire sections of your bass learning life. You can also go, sign up and get even more content from, the site itself and get access to, lots more video lessons and all that kind of stuff. But again, there's just so much available even for free. Like you could lose weeks, months just going through a lot of that, and you would learn a whole lot, especially if you started with things like these articulations that we'll talk about today, and as well as things like different techniques like slap, for example, if that's something that you're interested in. There's some bass players who've been playing bass for decades and they can't slap at all. And it's not that they technically can't, they just never bothered to learn and never thought it was necessary. But to me, it was kind of to round out the whole bass player thing. It's something that you should know technically. And I still don't consider myself a good slap bass player. It's like I've been on stage with people where I'm the bass player, and I was looking around and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like the fourth best bass player in this band. And it's like, because there was 3 other guys in the band. Like, my buddy Pepe was, had played bass professionally for, decades. And, cousin Jeff was there, and I've seen him, you can imagine what he does with the bass is ridiculous. So it's like, I'm like, great. I'm like, nothing wrong with that. But it's just, as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I really need to step up my game to get, to get where I'm at least one of the best bass players in the band. That would be
Well,
good.
and slap is like a bass technique that's distinctive to the type of music that you're playing. So if you are doing a lot of funk in the band, then you have to beat yourself up to be the best slapper that you can be, because you can't have that genre without that technique.
And you've heard some of the way, some of the styles or some of the lines that Pepe uses. We have more, unreleased songs that we're still working on. We're going to be re-recording some. Like, I'm going out there each week now, and we're going to be working on doing some of the mixing. And in some cases, a lot of the cases, it's just what we have down is more the skeletal structure of a song, and it's got the parts in there so that we can use that as a framework to now go in and record the parts again, for example. And I'm happy to redo my bass parts all the time. But we have at least a structure and a timing to work from, and then it's a matter of getting drums in there and figuring out how to work from there, and whether I'll be doing the drums, because I played some drums when I was out there the other day, and it was nice. Like, he'd gotten those new cymbals I was telling you about, so he had the new hi-hat and new crash and ride, and just
and
got to just sit down and play a little bit.
Cymbals sound so good when they're fresh.
Yeah, freshies. And I was playing them with, I had forgotten that I had them out there, but they're brushes that are like the plastic, like nylon, I guess. But it's like, it's like a little forest of like 20 nylon tubes with a rubber band holding them together. And it was nice because it wasn't super loud, crack-a-lack-a-crack-a with everything, that I'm just, it was able to just kind of settle in and just play nice and quiet. And I had Jeff playing piano and Pepe was playing bass, so it was
I
worked out
really
nice.
like brush drumming, especially if you're getting into like some of that like jazz, soft kind of jazz. The splash that you get off of a brush on a snare, just so pleasing sounding.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, it's that plastic that just again, it's not that that's a cheap thing. It's the way it sounds when it comes off. Like again, the brand new cymbals, and then you get that little splash from there. And if you loosen it up a little bit, it splashes differently because they're all going to hit and splash out. Where if it's tighter, it'll hit more like a stick would, but not as crisp an attack. I was looking at the sticks that he has at the house there. They're Vic Firth sticks, but one of them is a 7A and the other's a 5B. I'm like, that's when I first picked them up, I'm like, whoa, like these are not the same. Most definitely different weights going on there. But yeah, Scott's most definitely excellent. What I was thinking about from the studio over Joey's house, the bass that I use over there is awesome. It's that ESP LTD bass I was telling you about. That it's a 5-string like mine, but mine has 20 frets, and the one at the studio has 24. And we talked about that before.
The long neck.
It's not even that it's necessarily longer. It's just the fretboard goes further into the body, let's say, so that the frets are just closer together up on the inner part. Once you're getting up in here, as I pick up the whole stand with the strap, always a good plan.
Oh, you can get down on it.
It's over here. The question is, with the other view, you can probably see it better. That one. So with the, this goes up to, when you get to 12, right? 12, 15, 17, 19, and then this last one is 20. So this is 20 frets, and they basically, on a 24 fret, it would just be an additional like 21, 22, 23, 24. So you're up in here.
Goes deeper.
Goes
deeper on the...
And they're just that much closer together. The same way that these are all getting closer and closer together as you get down this way, you keep getting closer together on these last ones. So they're, it's not easy to play on it. Like you wouldn't want to try to get your whole hand into things up here and with the cutaway, but just in messing around, like I'll just be sliding notes around all day, and I'm not sure how loud this is, so make sure I'm not killing anybody here. But just but the note that if you can get all the way up to the 24th fret, then you're getting up to the same note that you get at the 12th fret. So you'd be getting to that note, but instead you can only get up to and that's as high as you can get up on this 5-string. But again, I don't usually play that high on the neck, but if I'm going to be playing, especially if I'm playing on the low, the B string, you do all that kind of thing up in there, whether you're just using the thumb on that, and that's where, again, fingerstyle is always my preference, but that's just kind of pulling, and you can kind of pull away even, but that way you can just kind of, whatever you're doing with that. But then a lot of times if you're doing the higher strings, you're doing this kind of thing where you're doing the back and forth. But that's if you're going to be playing fast. A lot of times you're just playing thump, 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 and keeping it down with whatever. But it's always fun.
Now your location of your hand, because I noticed you kind of go right below the pickup, where when you're fingering.
Depends. A lot of times, like for right now, I was fingering a little bit further up than I usually do, just to be able to get into the camera. Usually, I'll pick this area right between the end of the neck.
If you were to go
and
up,
if I came up into the fretboard there, it's kind of, you can't really pick as well because the frets and the fretboard are kind of in the way. So you want to be in an area where you can get under, or you have the play, or you can get loose. So I would choose this area between, and sometimes you can go all the way back between the pickups, and you can actually really hear the difference if you go all the way back. So like, I'll go back to this, from this view. If I'm playing all the way back here, even like you play way back compared to up in the middle, like here you get a warmer sound if I'm playing up in the middle, and this is just gonna be like 9th fret, highest string, 9th fret, and just playing there. And if I come back, and then all the way back,
you hear a total difference.
it's like a twang way back here, and it also depends on how much tone you have on there. This is fully open on the volumes. This is fully on the tone knob and fully up here, middle, and back here.
And there's no good or bad. I mean, those are all useful different tones.
Yep, and then if you bring the tone down halfway. And then down to no tone. Get louder right
Oh,
in between
yeah.
the pickups.
Yeah, if you're looking for a certain kind of effect, going higher does give you a distinct difference.
And that's one of the things I find myself doing all the time in rehearsals, just kind of roaming, kind of sliding up and down, and just kind of, as soon as like Joey will just start playing something, and I'll just find whatever note he started on and just kind of mimic what he was doing. And so before we know it, we're playing a song, and everybody else is like, "Wait, what song is that?" And I'm just like, "I don't know."
Well, and if you're going up and down the neck like that, and you're trying to figure out like whatever key he's in, you're hitting the key as you're going up and down real fast.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like, I can, even the first note that I hit, even before I, like, trying different things, a lot of times I can just hear, like, it sounds like, it feels like that's a D, and I'll go hit a D, and like, boom, there it is. It's like, we're already in. And then he's going to go to one of the places I would expect him to go, or,
Yeah, it's good when you get to know, like, the musicians that you're jamming with, and you know their keys, you know their directions.
And the musical style, that has a lot to do with it also, whether it's going to be 1-4-5s or whether it's going to be more, we're going to go to using some minor 3s and using 6s and that kind of stuff. It depends who you're playing with as to what kinds of structure you're going to get. But a lot of times that we do so much rock stuff that we end up with a lot of the box type patterns where on the guitar you're doing from this claw down, you just go down a string, and then slightly different claw, but you're basically going from here 1 down, or from here 1 down and 2 over, and then back down here and then back, and you're making a little square or cross pattern or whatever in the chords that you're making. They make more sense again when we go back into some of the other things that we look at, which are things like the caged system and how that relates to the pentatonics and the diatonics. Again, getting back into some guitar theory. We don't have to get too deep into it, but we do have one of the videos that we have was from POW Music, and I think we had from that one I had some of the PDFs, and we can look at those at some point as well. That have it was just a really good resource that got into. We talked 2 weeks ago about some of the charts that I use, or some of the things that I look at as visual aids when I'm practicing or just thinking about different ways of looking at music on a guitar and how to get around different shapes and different scales and different ideas, how to get them out. Well, one of the big ideas is just try to do phrasing on 1 string, not as necessarily the final way to do things, but as a way to really get comfortable with how the notes all relate to each other on 1 string, so that you can, at any place, at any time, from the note where you are, you can figure something out because you know how to just move on that 1 string in a way that makes sense, in a minor scale or a major scale, or in whatever position that you feel you're in at that time. But there's definitely some good stuff there with the charts that I had found.
He's another one with a lot of different categories of tips.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of mixing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now some of these with the charts.
Yeah, these are the guys using that colorful tab approach.
Yep. And for some of them, it's I want to say the one was fretLIVE, where it was also set up where, again, you can see like a shadow of him playing. Like you'll see the fret on one of the videos that we're going to watch in a little bit. It has just an overview of the fretboard there, and you can actually see like him playing, and you'll see the notes light up as he's hitting them and what interval they are. So like this is the 6th, and then he's hitting the root, and then he's hitting the 3rd, that kind of thing. So you can just really very easily see and what position he's playing in, and it shows the overlay of the scale mode that he's in at the time. Very cool way to visualize it, and an easy way to try to absorb and try to keep it bite-sized too. Like if you're just paying attention in the one video, it's just about how to pay attention to this one shape, and you can just and he's the whole time he's playing in a major key, and the whole time he plays in a minor key, and he's just able to stay in that one shape in order to just land in different places and get that feel, whether it's landing on the root, landing on the 3rd, landing on the 5th. Once you get comfortable with those ideas, it makes it more comfortable to be able to play in all these different places and open up different ideas, because each position can open up different feelings on how you land and the way the phrases come across.
Which opens up your options on where you land.
Yep. And it's not like you have to drill this scale and then that scale. It's more that as you're doing things, you can kind of see these connections and say, well, what if I go over here? And then when you go over there, it'll sound different, and you'll have different little lick ideas that you can do in that position that you couldn't do in the other position. So things will sound different. gets you out of a rut too. Some people they feel like they pick up a guitar and they always do the same thing all the time, and that gets them bored, and then they put it down and they don't bother again. They say they're not making progress.
It's not just guitar where that happens.
Yeah,
It happens on keyboards too.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of times it's take yourself out of your comfort zone and like pick a new key that you don't usually play in, where there's a whole lot of sharps or a whole lot of flats or whatever, something that you're not used to, and just kind of force yourself to play in it for a little bit and just see what it feels like, see what it sounds like, and it would really open up a lot of things for you if it is a keyboard thing. For guitar, again, it is kind of a cheat mode in terms of, if we're playing in C or playing in D or playing in D flat or playing in C sharp, we really don't care. It's just, this fret or that fret or this fret or that fret, and we do the same thing. Yeah, exactly. As long as if you know the major scale, you know the minor scale, and you know the different modes of both, then, you can play all of it. And that's just a question of, play it here or play it there. It's one reason why I suggest, people learn a fretted instrument, whether it's a bass or whether it's a guitar, because understanding how they go together on those and the amount of expression that you can do with the stringed instruments, to me is awesome. And the thing is that I've started getting better with the expression on the keyboard. The whole soloing thing is something that's that's just throwing together little pentatonic licks and things, but being able to actually keep a cohesive thing together with chords is something that I still don't feel like I can pull off. It's like one of those things that's like, when there's something happening as a song, I can kind of add into something or jump on board, so to speak, and throw little bits of keys at it. But like if I were just to sit at a piano at a mall and like play this, it's like I don't have anything that I would just be able to just pump out or whatever.
Yeah, and understanding one complements the other.
Mm-hmm.
I do think playing the stringed instruments does make you a better keyboardist. That's why I really want to learn them. Yeah.
And again, if you have a guitar in the house and you want to learn bass, those fattest four strings on a guitar, they are a bass. Those are the notes. Start working with that, because you've already got it, and it's the way to get comfortable with the feeling of the strings and all that. Because again, one of the things that slowed me down from progress for a lot of years was that every time I would pick up the guitar, I would only play 5-10 minutes, play the same Pink Floyd song 3 times, and maybe play Foxy Lady once, and then by then like I had the dents in my fingers, and because I don't play it often enough that I couldn't, and I was also pushing too hard.
And the Foxy Lady will give you dents.
yeah, and the strings are old at that point, so you're playing with like not rusty strings, but the strings have grit and grime on them, so if you try to slide anywhere, it's not smooth like it should be, because you're not taking care of your guitar, because you're not playing very often. So it's a whole bunch of factors that all kind of fed together to me having issues, and I'd only play for a few minutes, put it back down, and my hand would still be hurting the next day or two, so I wouldn't pick it up again for at least another week or two or whatever, and just not make any progress until I really just kind of focused on when I got my bass. I got the bass, and I got some things like a bass exercises workbook, and most of the whole thing was just exercises like 1 2 1 3 1 4 1 3 1 2, and just going back and forth and just doing menial exercises like that. But the idea being, you're doing it. You're getting those notes under your fingers. You're working the muscles in the fingers. You're getting the toughening of the skin, building up the endurance, the calluses.
Your musical endurance is
and the muscle memory.
Real muscle.
Yeah, and the muscle memory to be able to do stuff. And now it's like playing for hours is no big deal, and I play pretty much every day for hours, whether I'm at a rehearsal or whether I'm just sitting around the house, because whatever I'm doing, there'll be some kind of music somewhere for some reason, and whatever it is, I can just pick up an instrument and just kind of join in. And that's kind of a new thing also in the last couple of years that I really like, is that I always wanted to be able to just something comes on and I'm able to just kind of jump in and play something that kind of fits with whatever's going on. And I'm getting with the different instruments, I do feel more comfortable with some than others, but I feel like I'm able to contribute wherever I'm sitting now, which is good, and it's fun.
Oh, and with all the practicing you're getting to have, because you're doing it so regularly, your musical endurance is like hours and hours. I mean, band practice puts you in a creative exercise mode where you can go for hours.
Exactly. Plus, we're having fun anyway. So it's not, nobody's cracking a whip anywhere, so we're all just hanging out and having fun wherever we're practicing. So that's also a key thing, is that for me, music has always been about fun. If somebody was, in an orchestra and everything was all very hush-hush and serious, and I'm sure that there are orchestras who have a lot of fun too, don't get me wrong. But if it was something that was super, super stuffy, and nobody really talks, they're just all kind of hushed tones. They get in there, they do their thing, and then they get out of there. Like that would not be the kind of thing that I would be interested in, but you know, it would sound amazing, I'm sure, you know, in an orchestra like that. But the chemistry is really what kind of keeps it together, and that's where the smaller bands, whether it's, you know, a few pieces or up to 8 pieces, 10 pieces, whatever, something not quite a full orchestra, but I'm sure that there's camaraderie in a full orchestra as well. So again, I'm not trying to say anything against orchestras.
Well, and you know, when you are dealing with those big bands where you do have some horns or different sections that are mixed with, you know, traditional bass, drums, guitars, sometimes those extra pieces are more mechanical. Like they come in, they do their parts, and they may not like just hang out and jam as much as like the bassist and the drummer who might stay there all night jamming.
Yep. I think I always go back to with the orchestra thing. I'm always thinking about was the Money Pit, maybe old movie, but there's one point where, you know, they work for the one conductor and he's just impossible to please. Like he's always mad about whatever, and so like the one day he was like, well, that was
them maestros.
He's like, well, that was not so bad, and like when they heard that, they all like popping champagne and woo, like everybody's going nuts because like that was like the best that he's ever, you know, the least complaint that there ever was from it, but just something silly like that.
Well, and conductors can be, you remember that Seinfeld episode where the guy wanted everyone to call him Maestro? Jerry's like, I'm not calling him Maestro, but the Maestro doesn't like that.
Talking about yourself in third person, not a good sign.
And some of them can be like that. Conductors have an unusual kind of job in music. And, you know, some people think they're just waving sticks around, but there's more going on to be a true maestro.
Yeah, I mean, they're controlling the intensity, the speed, all that kind of stuff, as well as, you know, think of that about them as playing a keyboard, but each key is one of the people in the orchestra.
Yes.
And they don't have to be hitting each one at all times, but if they see something that's not happening the way it should be, they're going to point it out to them, or if they need something more from somebody specific, they can this more, that whatever, you know, they can get the adjustments.
They're like the ringleaders to the orchestra, reminding which parts of them should emphasize and the tempo that they're doing, because he could be bouncing one hand one way for, you know, the violins and bouncing another hand another way for the timpanis and percussion.
Preparing for the big thing coming up,
And then reminding all of them, swell down, you know, like all of that signaling and things that are going on, the orchestral musicians understand.
Yeah, and a lot of times the conductor is very animated in the motions that they're doing, you know, in order to get, you know, the big changes of emotion or intensity that they want from the band. They kind of overemphasize what they're looking for. If it's going to be sad and low, it's like very, very sad and low. Or if it's big, you know, big and bold, like very, very big and bold, you know, whatever. They, you know, get each of the emotions very much involved in all of their gestures when they start getting into it, really.
That's why a lot of them have like crazy Beethoven hair, Einstein hair, because they shake.
Or the ones you get in Tom and Jerry, where like the collar by the end, like it's all flipping out because he's so like stressed out from the whole thing of trying to go with the piano going super fast because Tom's trying to knock Jerry off of the piano.
Oh, those were my favorite Tom and Jerry's.
Yeah. And I always had always loved Tom and Jerry, and especially the musical ones. Those the ones where they froze over the kitchen and have like the ice capades in the kitchen was always a good one. But yeah, the musical ones are always key, with the piano especially. The waltz, that was a good one.
So we're going to look at how to go from pentatonic to diatonic.
Yeah. And this is from the page of?
This one is the
POW Music.
Yeah, the POW Music.
Nice. And yeah, I have some of the, there are PDFs on, I don't remember if he mentions them in this video or if it was one of the other videos that we've looked at recently, but from whichever video it is, there's links in the video description to go to the website. Just, you know, you put in the email address and they send you over the PDFs, and we'll look at some of the charts that are there, and some of the triad ones especially are just, magical in my opinion. And the way that they're laid out in these charts is very intuitive and teaches the pentatonic and how it relates to the diatonic. It's one of the things that we looked at with the charts a few weeks ago. Similar ideas, but laid out in a very cool way in the videos.
Yeah,
POW Music.
He's got links to those.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's check this out.
Right.
All right, so we're gonna play through all of the 5 vertical, pentatonic, and diatonic scale patterns. We're gonna transition back and forth between pentatonic and diatonic by just adding or removing 2 notes. So we're gonna do this first in A minor and then in C major, starting with pentatonic pattern 1. And we're playing over an A minor drone so we can really hear the sound of each interval relative to the tonic. So the pentatonic scale only has 5 notes. But now we're playing the full 7-note diatonic minor scale by adding back in the major 2nd and the minor 6th. Moving on to pattern 2 of the minor pentatonic. So this shape has this awesome little House of Blues area. And now we're going diatonic, adding in those missing half steps that aren't in the pentatonic. Notes that are 1 fret apart. Moving on to pattern 3 of the pentatonic. So this shape's particularly great on the lowest 3 strings, right there on the E, A, and D strings. Now the full diatonic A minor scale, adding back in those half steps. Moving on to my second favorite pentatonic shape, pattern 4. This is one of the core 2.5 patterns that I talk about. Now diatonic, also a great finger-friendly diatonic shape. Heading into pentatonic pattern 5. So the top 2 strings are great to go into from pattern 4, and the bottom 2 strings are great to back into from pattern 5. Going diatonic now. So as you can see, the difference between the regular diatonic minor scale and minor pentatonic is these 2 missing notes, the major 2nd and the minor 6th. So every minor scale is also a major scale, and we need to understand the relative major and minor. So now we're going to do the same exact thing in C major with C major pentatonic and the diatonic C major scale. So now all of the interval numbers have been changed to reflect the new tonic or first note of the relative major key of C major. So what was the flat 3rd in the relative minor is now the tonic or home note in the relative major, number 1. And what was the tonic in the relative minor is now the major 6th in the relative major. So in relation to the new tonic, all of the intervals are different, and that's why it's also going to sound very different. So if you really want to have a complete understanding of the theory, check out my fretLIVE Fretboard Mastery program. It's a 12-week, 12-unit course where we start from the very beginning of how music works on the fretboard, and each week for every unit, there's a fretLIVE theory lesson, creative activities, and song lessons so you could apply each concept. And each week you share your work in a private group with 40 other students where you could give each other feedback, support, accountability, and motivation. There's live Zoom classes, there's quizzes, there's activities, there's worksheets, there's PDFs. It's pretty much just like a college course, but a lot more fun. So as I'm recording this video, we're halfway through the first ever 12-week program with the first 40 students, and it's been awesome so far. So there's something about this live interaction between the classmates where everyone's learning and working on the same thing at the same time, and then with myself as the teacher, being able to give feedback on all of the videos, to have the weekly live session where everyone could ask questions and interact. It's something you can't get from a basic online course that you just buy and work through by yourself, or just watching random YouTube videos. So through this course, you'll learn how music works on the guitar, from the most basic principles of music theory to really understanding keys and scales and intervals and chord construction and all that good stuff. So I'll put a link in the description, and I hope to see you in the next cohort. Oh, and one last thing before we get into the lesson. If you want 2 free PDF packets, one on the pentatonic scale, one on the diatonic scale, the links for both of those are in the description. If you want 2 PDFs that show both of them together to go along with this lesson in 2 keys, in C major A minor and G major E minor, that's available for PAL Music patrons, along with 4 separate drone backing track videos for all 4 of those keys with the graphics on the screen so you could practice along. And by supporting Pal Music as a patron, you'll also get access to tab and supporting resources for all my lessons and twice weekly live face-to-face Zoom sessions. All right, so now let's play through all those scale shapes again, but this time in C major with the C major drone and the C major intervals. Starting in pattern 1 again of the pentatonic. But now all the notes sound different because we're hearing them in relation to C and not A. So they're different intervals. Now diatonic. This is pattern 5. So relative to the major root, the 2 missing notes in pentatonic are the major 7th and the perfect 4th. Moving on now to pentatonic pattern 2. And now that House of Blues area sounds so different relative to the major root. So a lot of my improv ideas are coming from patterns that you can practice through the scales. I go over those in the free PDF download in the description, and we go really in depth on those in the fretLIVE Fretboard Mastery program. So now I'm starting in pattern 2 diatonic, and then I'll go to pattern 3 pentatonic. So the whole point here is you want to be able to switch back and forth between diatonic and pentatonic so that you could access these 2 different sounds. And you want to understand exactly how they relate to each other, both in terms of their sound, their shape, and the theory. What are the missing notes? Moving on to pattern 4, pentatonic. Again, one of the core 2 shapes, pattern 1 and pattern 4. This shape has the roots on the A string. Now diatonic, pattern 3. Such a great shape. Moving on to pattern 5, pentatonic. Such a brighter sound in major. Now going diatonic. Accessing those half steps. Half steps are great for trills. Hey everybody, Gary here with Pal Music, and in this video we're going to go over how, instead of learning brand new shapes if you're transitioning from pentatonic to diatonic or diatonic to pentatonic, you're just going to either add in 2 notes or take out 2 notes from the 5 vertical shapes that you already know. Pentatonic. Diatonic. Pentatonic. Diatonic. Pentatonic. Diatonic. Pentatonic. Diatonic. Pentatonic. Diatonic. So the reason why the scale pattern numbers are different for diatonic and pentatonic is that in order for a pattern to be considered number 1, the tonic or starting note of the scale has to be on the low E string closest to where that pattern position begins. So for C major diatonic, this would be shape 1 because the root is closest to where the position starts. The position starts in the key of C on fret 7, and here's my root on fret 8. 1, 7, 1. So that's deemed pattern 1. And being that the major scale is the first mode of the diatonic scale, Ionian mode, myself and many others will stick with the same pattern numbers no matter what diatonic mode, whether it's minor, Dorian, Mixolydian, etc. The pattern numbers will stay the same for simplicity. Whereas pentatonic, is that this is pattern 1. Because we think primarily of minor pentatonic, and the minor root is right here, right? On the low E string, closest to where the position starts, exactly where the position starts on fret 5. So that's why there's that number discrepancy, is that pentatonic we defer to minor as the default, diatonic we defer to major as the default. But shape 5 diatonic is shape 1 pentatonic. That's in my way of teaching it, and you might encounter it that way elsewhere. In the Cage system, they're both the G shape, because here's our G chord. And that chord goes along with that shape. Or right? So in this major shape, we have 1, 2. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that lesson. I hope you learned a few things. I hope I simplified the idea of going from pentatonic to diatonic and back again. So this is just one lesson I made available for YouTube in a full unit on the pentatonic scale among 12 sequential units on understanding how music works on the fretboard in the fretLIVE Fretboard Mastery Program. So if you're interested in joining one of the upcoming groups, links in the description. If you want to see a bunch of other pentatonic scale videos that are free here on YouTube that I made, I'll put them all in the description in order so you could work through all of them. I think my pentatonic videos have over 1 million views combined, so some of them have been really helpful for a lot of people. So definitely check that in the description. All right, everybody, happy playing, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Before I go, I just want to extend a big thank you to all of the POW Music patrons, and a special thank you to the following higher level patrons at patreon.com/POWmusic. Thank you to Alexander Pitterman, Andrew Vogel, Arwin Gu Zen, Cam Chernachan, Chris Watson, Chris Freeman, Daniel Small, Derek Mickle, Don Stringham, Donald James Grass, Joff Weathermax, Jim McCall, John Hartquist, John Cushman, Joseph McCarthy, Jurgen Schwartz, Newt Olive Wald, Noah Brand, Rich Mason, Ryan Helston, Sean Ellis, and Trampus Thompson. Thank you so much for making these lessons possible. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.
Wow, if that's what you get for free, can you just imagine what's in those lessons?
Yep. And those PDFs are one of the things that I have, that I was going to show a little bit of, because they basically do break down the same way that he was looking or showing those videos right there, showing the different patterns. The way that they break down in the PDF for the pentatonic, for example, you see the whole neck broken out the way that we were looking at it before, and then he has it by each position, so that pentatonic position 1 over here, and then again at the octave over here, and how they relate. And you can see that the size difference, how with the frets this far apart it looks this big, and then way up here it's like much closer together. So
and I love his presentation, the way he presents the information. That dual view and walking through them just as if you were playing an exercise in yourself. I'm not even a guitarist, and I understood like everything he was showing there. Yeah.
And as he's playing, just the way that, the notes are all lighting up, and you're seeing his hand, playing the actual notes underneath. You can see when he's bending, what he's bending from, you can see all of those things just in the presentation, the way he has it set up there, which I think is very cool as well.
Yeah, seeing those bends actually through the glass with his fingers hitting it, and seeing the string shift makes me understand how you guys work.
Yep. And again, it's about where in the scale also. So that you're using it in the right places. So you're bending.
Well, yeah,
from...
like he said, the 1 is a good place to do trills.
Yep. When you've got those two that are right next to each other, yeah. If you're playing diatonic. Things like that.
Hey, that was cartoon music 101.
Yep. B and the C and the E and the F, the two that are next to each other. You just work your way anywhere you want to go. A little bit of trills. Now, the tricky part was trying to do trills on the same note. And that's trying to do 2 at once. Actually, you can't even see it.
Yeah, it's easier with the bouncy keys.
Yeah. Let me see if I do it that way, maybe. And that way.
And this is the kind of shit that will fuck Ridiculous up once in a while.
So the bouncy keys, not the weighted keys. That would definitely not work on a piano or the heavy keys, because you cannot get that kind of speed just because the key physically won't come back fast enough for you to push it down again.
Well,
you know.
that transpose idea that you had works. Like
Yeah.
I can get that kind of bounce if I do it. If I split the keyboard, use the same patch, and take the same octave, like for the same E, then I can hit two different keys and get the same sound.
Yeah.
It works good.
Yep. And that's what I do with you can do that with drum patches too. Like if you have the 8 pads for the drum patches, you can, if you say 2 and 4 are both snare, for example, or 2 and 3, whatever, 2 pads next to each other, so that you can sit there, with the 2 different hands, just between the 2 of them. What's up, Bobby?
Yeah, I should utilize my pads more for those kinds of scenarios.
And even for certain types of instruments that, you really only need the impact, but it's just the timing of the impact is that important.
Timpanis work great with those pads.
Oh, yeah. That's a good use. Most definitely. But yeah, as we said, for this resource here at POW Music, there are PDFs that we can download, and we'll take a look at those in a little bit here as well. But this is just looking at the videos that he has available, and again, just such a good resource. So many good things on here, and ones that just kind of jump out at you. Where it's most of them are, for me, it was mostly about whether it's scales or modes or things like that. And a lot of times for me, it's things that are review, but I like to review them anyway, because a lot of times people have either a different way of looking at it, or something will just be in this case like a good presentation of how it's all put together, and how it makes it easy to present to someone else, and get them to kind of grasp what's going on with it. Good visualizations and all.
Oh, his visualizations for guitar are light years ahead of everybody else. I mean, this is the best fret tablature that you can see in real time on YouTube.
Definitely love it. Only recently found it, but definitely a good resource. And again, I'm always
like
open to
John
hear
Mayer.
what other people like, as well, because there's other people who give good resources as well. We find things on, again, many different sites, but so again, certain things just kind of pop out at you as a really good way to look at things, even, and that's what I liked about this, especially that pentatonic to diatonic. That one exercise right there is, if you get comfortable with that, he went through 5 pentatonic positions and 5 diatonic positions based on those pentatonic positions, and if you can get comfortable with that exercise alone, like just take that part of the video, put it on repeat, and just work through that until that really kind of sinks in, you're there, because that's just, you can literally apply that to anything, because then as soon as you find the major or minor root, you can just jump into that mode where, do I want this to be a pentatonic sounding thing? I can just kind of do that, and then drop in a diatonic line here, and that way it sounds different and sounds special. It really does. It's a matter of using the different pieces of scales in ways like spices. A little bit here, a little bit there, and pick a little bit from this thing, a little bit from that thing, put them together in ways that are unexpected maybe, but sound good together. POW Music, POW Music.
Yeah, I like what he's doing.
Yep.
That's where you go to learn.
And again, a lot of times for me, it's about just even having that on screen, that I'm looking at, a chart, like the ones that he has up on there. It just makes it so easier when I'm practicing. I'll just be practicing in this position, then I'll slide to another position, and just kind of let my eyes rest on that position. I'm just looking at it as I'm hitting the notes, and kind of reinforcing what I'm hitting, and again, knowing what interval you're hitting more than what note you're hitting, because I'm less interested whether I'm hitting C and then G and then an A than I am about knowing that I'm hitting a 1 and then a 5 and then a 6, because that makes it translatable, especially again on guitar, where I can just slide up a fret, slide down a fret.
That is the guitar keyboard difference. Because me, I'm always like, what key am I hitting?
Yeah, but by understanding the relationship between the keys and the intervals, then again, it still does matter for you for fingering for a keyboard. But the idea is that whatever key it is, it's still the same. You're able to transpose it to any key because it's still the 1, the 5, and the 6. No matter whether you're playing in C or you're playing in G, you can figure out what the 1, 5, and 6 should be. Because that's what they would still sound the same relative to each other, even though it doesn't sound the same playing it in C as it would in G.
And I'm forcing myself to be more aware of step distance. So
Yep.
if I'm hitting this key and that key, and what's the distance between them? See, with the
That's a
guitars, you guys just think in frets.
Mhm.
With the keyboard, it's like seeing the frets means seeing the half step relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where again the for me thinking about when I do just kind of jump in on something on keyboard, I don't really think back about what the fingerings are and all that. I just kind of hit a note or two and I figure out whether it feels more like it should be that note or that note, and whichever one feels right. Okay, we're in this key, so I'll be playing with this note. And say that's A minor. Let's say that's where we're playing then, and then you can just kind of hang out in there. Just keeping hitting all of the white notes with the A as the root there, but it's just being comfortable with the way different things sound. Like the A to the D sounds like that, so you could use that at any time, and it sounds kind of suspended because you're not hitting a third, you're not hitting a fifth, you're hitting the fourth and the root. Where normally you would have the C and the E.
Well, it's like you said, if you focus on the third and the one, doing those thirds kind of establishes whether is it a minor third or a major third.
Yep.
Once I've established that, whatever I do with the fourth sounds very different if it's going to a major, which is a half step, versus
And again,
that minor.
if you do throw that fourth right there, you wouldn't usually use the third with it because they are so close together that it's a crunch chord. You're allowed. I mean, it can be done.
Well, it's a
but it
scary
sounds like
movie
that.
chord.
But you could also do it this way, where you throw that. That's the 11. Throw it way up there. Same note, just it's more out of the way because it's an octave higher all of a sudden. So you're establishing, like you said, you're establishing the third sound down there, and then throwing that 11 up top. It's just loud because it's so high.
It's that scene in the movie where the character's confused.
And then it goes to the 16th. Not the 16th, the 13th. Which is the F, which would be basically like the 6, but up an octave. And again, I don't have the Meticulous on for some reason. See, when I go to the keys, I should just automatically
that stuff works really good for soundtracks kind of situations. Music that's accompanying something going on. Like the old silent film days where they didn't have humans talking in them, so they did everything through music to explain what was going on in the video.
The intensity of the situation, the chase scene, all that stuff. Yeah, the music would tell the whole story for you because it had to, because there was nobody telling the story other than that.
Yeah, and expressive music like that goes even back to the classical music approach. A lot of times, the symphony was doing the talking with that music. You didn't need to have a narrator.
Soundtrack.
See, and that's got a sci-fi feel to it. With a patch like that, it feels sci-fi. You change that patch to like something more like traditional strings, it'll feel like a, neoclassical.
Halo pad. Space chorus.
Resolution.
Just moving around randomly. But yes, resolution is important. Tension is also important. So that's where using chords that you might not otherwise use or expect just to put somebody off balance is sometimes useful, but it should make the resolution more solid, but you do have to land that resolution to make that work.
Yeah, and if you utilize tension, a resolution really can work great when you get the ear tense and then resolve it.
Mm-hmm. The one that we
It's
always
like
like
that
is
moment in a scary movie where like they make you jump and then you're like, oh, I'm still alive.
Yep. There was one that was, I think it was a 1-5-4-5. So very simple progression, but I think breaking up the chords, it was reminding me of several songs. I think one of them was a song that was from somewhere here, and one of them is definitely, or at least several of them, are songs that I've heard out in the world as far as, progressions, 500 songs could be the same progression and all that, right? But breaking up chords as well, but like kind of bouncing back and forth with those, like, and then kind of going with
Home sweet home.
Yep. That's probably one of them. Yep. Starting on the one with the C and then going to the 5 with the G, right? So, and then with the 4, and then back to the 5 again, but going down here for it. So it kind of works its way down as it's going, but it's still just a 1-5-4-5. But I just like the fact that you're just kind of keeping the chords in that same neighborhood, and you get that that voice leading kind of working its way down from that C to a G just by shifting these two down, to an F by moving them all down, to a C by just moving these two down, and then to a G. So you can throw that C in there as well, and you're kind of just walking your way down. Another F. And G.
To the G. Or if you really want to get creative, you can go to an E, but instead of playing an E minor, play an E major. That F, if you want to shift it, can shift to an E major. Really nice.
And then the C kind of is where you would resolve if you were ending that on a C. Even with that E major, I would say. Still feels right.
Yeah, that's a progression I've been playing with since the beginning.
Yep. And again, just throwing different things in there, whether it's dropping it in an A minor or dropping it to a D minor, or like you said, borrowing a chord, because that E major, again, it doesn't belong there, but nobody says you can't use it. It's a borrowed chord, taking in that, the major 3 there.
Yeah, last month, Whiter Shade of Pale, that's one that has that kind of down progression. Pretty much
exactly. Yeah.
Same progression, just in a different scale.
Yep.
It wasn't in C.
Same idea, definitely. We played that one, and I think I was playing bass on it. And Jeff, my cousin Jeff, had really good ideas on playing it on the bass. So I recorded him doing it and worked on it later, and was able to get kind of towards that feel that he was getting at one point, because it was a really nice bounce that he had going into it, which was not the normal way of playing it, but it was a very cool way that he came up with. So I was enjoying that. I'd never tried that on the keyboard, though, so I would have to check that out again.
I was so glad that I visited this one, because the organ part in that one, one of my favorite organs of all time, next to the Doors.
Yeah. Love Riders on the Storm. I mean, there's so many good songs, but that one in particular always stands out for me.
Yeah, this one has a nice church-like organ kind of approach.
I think I told you I had a recording on, somewhere on BandLab, I have a recording of the one day I came home and it was just raining so hard. The rain was just pummeling my van, and I'm just listening to it in the car after I shut off the engine. I didn't want to get out of the car yet and get drenched. But as I'm listening to it, I'm like, I should just record this and see how it sounds. And I recorded it. It actually came out pretty good. And if I throw maybe a compressor on it, maybe, a little bit of EQ or whatever, I can, maybe bring it out even more, because it was kind of a little bit distant, but you definitely a good atmosphere to kind of throw into something at some point.
Oh, if you get really creative, you can turn those raindrops into drums.
Yeah.
There's a natural rhythm sometimes that goes on there, that if you can convert that rhythm into like an effect, you can make new types of drums.
And in this case, it would be amazing also because at certain points, it was the kind of rain that was coming down that at some points you could hear it. It was like sheeting, where it would be like, it sounds all normal, but then all of a sudden it's like you got hit by an extra wall of rain. It's like, that like hit all of a sudden because the wind pushed a whole bunch off a tree or whatever.
If you ever get caught in a hailstorm and
man.
you think fast enough, bust out the phone and record that, because you get
And just go, oh my God,
crazy sounds.
hail. Hail's crazy. I mean, get big hail, that's no good. Break windows, all that kind of nasty shit. That's where get under an underpass, just like a tornado.
But you can get a killer sample if,
Oh yeah,
if you're in the right place.
absolutely. I think people are talking about that coming down as like, you know, softball size or baseball size hail. That kind of thing will take out, you know, take out all the cars that are parked outside.
Yeah, well, the biggest one I ever seen, go figure, I saw in Texas. Like, you'd think down south you would never see ice balls, but one day there was like baseball and bigger size ice balls coming down, destroyed every car in every parking lot that was out in the open.
Brought to you by Ice Balls. Texas. Ice Balls from Texas. Now there's a song title for you. Ice Balls from Texas.
And the
Or
weirdest
in
thing,
Texas.
it was on like a 90-degree day. It was not a cold day.
So that's where you collect them all up. I mean, you don't want to be out when it's happening, but then when you go out after, you collect them all up and throw your beers in there. Got your ice for your beers, and you're all set.
Free ice.
Throw some in the kiddie pool. Have that for soaking your feet for later. Got to make use of that ice, man. Comes down like that. It's like a windfall. But instead of trees falling in the forest, just ice showing up out of nowhere. But yeah, you don't want to be under it when it's coming down because that would be a mess. But with that whole video that we just watched there, again, good charts that he has there and good approach that he has with that. And I just wanted to bring up the one of the PDFs that you can get from the site that he had over there, because there are some good ones there.
Yeah, that's the second video I've seen from him so far, and I love his approach.
Yeah.
For
Now, this
guitar
one-
learning, that's a go-to.
Yep. This is the same idea. We can even do it like that maybe. Same idea, but this is exactly what he was just going through. But this kind of just shows you the whole pentatonic scale all in one shot. These are the PDFs from his website that you can download. So go to his site, just download the whole thing for yourself, and you get your own copy, and you can check it out. But again, by having the main thing laid out like this in all the positions, and then just kind of breaking it down by like, here's the first shape, and there's the repeat of the first shape that much further down the neck, and that's where they relate to each other. And this way you can kind of focus on just, narrow in, boom, let me get it here and understand it there. And then understand that there's only 5 positions that you need to really focus on in order to get this whole thing locked in. And if you just focus on the pentatonic first, you start there and you say, there's position 1, then he's got that house of blues that he likes to talk about up in the top over there.
Yeah, seeing that visually clicks. I mean, you had shown me, and I kind of picked it up just watching your hands, but seeing it with color and actual diagrams, just...
And it really does stand out. And the fact that his approach about talking about 2.5 shapes to understand everything, like this is 1.5 of the 2.5 shapes right here. And then when you get to position 4 is the one that he was talking about as his second favorite position, which is getting up to, that's 3. So this would be shape 4. And then he's also breaking it down by strings. I like that as well. Like saying just focusing on 2 strings at a time and saying like this is the way to, go through this is how the notes relate to each other in each position in each of the patterns. So you can kind of focus on these. And with these you can see certain things like you can, kind of pick out patterns up in where it's going from the blue and red to the red and yellow to the yellow and green in that top section there, where the one string is like a 1-3-5 and the next string is like a 1-3-4 or whatever. You can see how you can get things, or whether that's a 1-3-6 and then 1-3-5. You can figure out those positions or those fingerings and how to utilize those in certain areas to get things to go in there. A lot of times you'd use the top strings for certain, solo ideas on the higher strings like that. But again, by focusing on things like that whole beginning area, like that would be like the place to start. And I like the way that he breaks it down and gives you a really good, solid starting place for learning these things on guitar or bass, because it's a little bit different fingering on the bass because you don't do that shift for the B string and the E string. But the same principle applies, and the beginning 4 strings are identical. So if you just start at the bottom and only use those bottom 4 strings, it's exactly what you would do on a bass to do the same ideas here, and how the positions all relate to each other. But again, very well put together PDFs that he has there, and there are a couple of different ones. The other one that I was going to mention from the same downloads. Oh, good.
Those exercises he was doing, he was going from Mixolydian to pentatonic.
He was going from diatonic to pentatonic, like he would play in, depending on the pentatonic is just the 5 notes, so similar to just playing the 5 black notes, and the diatonic is the playing all the white notes, so whether you're major or minor. And if you're playing Mixolydian, it would just be playing those same notes but in G. Or if you're playing Lydian, you'd be playing F, all the white notes. This is just the easiest way to get the sound of each of the modes into your head, is just to basically consider, starting at C, it would be Ionian, all the white notes. D would be, you're listening to Dorian. And then Phrygian. But that's the way to get the sound of the different modes into your head most easily, without having to worry about, I have to flatten this or sharpen that or do whatever. If you just remember where they are relative to C major.
One thing I noticed as I was watching his video, and he was going between those 2 modes and the patterns, is one mode would have a kind of two frets per string approach.
Yep, that's the pentatonics. Yep.
Yes, and that one strikes me as the foundation pattern to like memorize first, because when he would go into the other mode, there would be moments where there would be 3 notes on the same string, and or in some cases options, like there'd be a 7th, or he would not highlight it, but he would show like you could hit this note and it would still work.
That's the other thing, is there are different options, and even because there are options even in the way you play the diatonic scales, where some of the strings are 3 notes and some of the notes are 2 notes per string. But in some schools of thought, they play 3 notes per string on every string for the whole scale, just to be able to do the gallop thing where you're doing da-ga-da-da-ga-da-da-ga-da-da-ga-da.
The 2 approach, if I was like trying to get comfortable playing a guitar,
it's a great place to start.
Notes per string helps me to go up and down the string, get faster. Try that before you try to do 3 notes on the same string.
Yep. Agreed. And then the other one that we mentioned there was the triads. It's another one of the PDFs that he has for free there. I think there were 3 of them in total. But this one, just the way that it's all presented right here is, to me, the best thing, the best way I've seen it laid out. We were talking 2 weeks ago about one of the patterns or one of the charts that I had written out, but this I think actually even lays it out even better. And this is basically taking just 3 note chunks, like we were just saying. Taking the highest 3 notes is this top one, so the skinniest 3 strings. And if you look at the 3 different positions there, and the different colors around them are just representing whether it's the root position, the first inversion, or the second inversion. So you'll see that, for example, if it says that blue is the root position, then you'll see that that one between the C and the G on the top there, that's blue, that's the root position. So that'd be root, 3rd, 5th, going from low to high. And then the other ones would be the first inversion, second inversion. And there's only those 3 positions that you would have to memorize the triads for major chords in in any key. You just basically, again, sliding it up 1 fret is another key, sliding up another fret is another key, but same position, same claw. You memorize those 3 claws there, and the fact that they repeat, and understand where they repeat like that, and you can bounce all up and down those top 3 string set with just those positions. To jump from down here, you just change from that claw to this claw to that claw, and then you can work your way up that way. And that's understanding the way the caged is all put together, which he has laid out with the brackets there. So C on the top, and then the A on the bottom, and the G, and then the E, and then the D, showing you where they are relative to each other and how they all kind of Lego block together. And as you understand more where you are, then you know what notes you have as options. And this is, again, looking at the triads. So this is the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. And if you look at the notes that are all together here in total, you're basically looking at arpeggios, where everything that's down here by C would be what you would play for the C chord. And then everything that's over there by G, that's what you would play for a G chord. So like you could see where they relate to each other. It's the shape, the C shape and the G shape. But what key it actually is depends on what fret you play it at.
Well, it's approaching all the possible inversions.
Yep. And it has it for, this is for the major chords, and it has the 3 string sets from like the skinniest 3, then the next 3, then the next 3, and the fattest 3. And if you play bass, the ones that they have for the fattest 3 string sets, or the fattest 2 sets, are the same as it would be on a bass. So basically you learn those, and you're learning your major triads there. And then this is the minor triads. Same idea, just, three positions that you need to learn for each of the string sets. And you would be, miles ahead of many people in terms of understanding where the root, third, and fifth are, and being able to land solos or understand where the positions are to be able to hit little chirp chords where you can just hit any of these little triads in any of these positions. Like if a song calls for a B minor, you can just go to any of these shapes. You know where a B is, and you know where the blue is, then you know that it's going to be the lowest note is going to be that B. Or if you're going to play, the B as the highest note, then, work with one of the inversions and you figure out which one you need. But it's a way of being able to kind of visualize those things. And once you start thinking about them that way, it helps you to understand what notes you are playing and not get lost as much, and be able to play other chord inversions, kind of like what we just did on the piano there, jumping from one inversion to another, just to kind of voice lead your way down without having to worry about what you're really doing, because you're just kind of working your way down to where you wanted to get to. But using triads like this is important, and I think this is the best way I've seen it laid out as far as the position goes, the root and the inversions. And that's also from POW Music, and that's something that you could download from over there as well for free. So I did.
And the inversions they make a lot more sense seeing them that way than when I look at them on the keyboard.
Yeah. And again, in the keyboard, a lot of times just the whole, what's sharp and what's flat, that kind of really gets in the way. Because it really changes the fingering a lot of times. It changes the way it feels.
You see the shape.
And it doesn't change key to key. It's just you're learning what things are relative to one another, as opposed to absolutism with the keyboard. I think I have a sneeze coming.
Well, bless you. Or as Antiphone would say, Gesundheit.
And I was like, where's the second one? I know it's there. Oh, it's going to be sneaky. It's going to sneak up on me all of a sudden. And sometimes a third. But
actually, maybe, 3 maybe not. Is my normal.
Is the magic number. 3 is the magic number. Now, the one that we just watched there was the diatonic and pentatonic. There were 2 other videos that were very, very similar in terms of the visualization. One was more those 2.5 shapes that we just talked about, where it was, again, getting the main pentatonic shape with that little house of blues, and then that one other position. And if you start there, that's, again, getting you miles ahead of a lot of people in terms, and not about being ahead of people in terms of it's being a race, but just give you a really good jump start, I should say, on understanding where you are and navigating what you need to understand. And for me, the other thing that kind of broke out into a different kind of understanding, I guess, of the way things are laid out on the bass or on the guitar was figuring out the using the patterns that are mobile, where using that pattern that we talked about a few times, where I'm doing like a 1-3-5, 1-3-5.
Adaptable.
Yeah, they're all you just slide them wherever you want for a different key. But basically, if I were to just start on the open string, you go like 5-7, 5-7, 5-7, 9, 7-9, working up like that, and starting from the very bottom, like the low B. That's just using that pattern. It doesn't matter. That's why whether this is a 5-string bass or a 6-string bass or a 7-string bass, I could just keep doing that same pattern, working my way up higher and higher, because it doesn't depend on where I am. It's all relative to the string before. So it's just root, and then like I'm doing a 1-3-5, 3-5, 3-5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7.
And you got a keyboard accompaniment.
I did. That's what you have around the keys right there. Too close.
Glenn and the Keyboard, a new band.
Yeah, I think I told you the other day I saw a keyboard player play play a trumpet part on the keyboard while playing an actual trumpet with the other hand. So that was impressive. That was with the one of the country bands I like, Southpaw. But with that pattern again, that's one of the things that gets you out of a single box. Like you're not thinking just one position. Like, oh, I'm at the 3rd fret and I'm locked into position 1 doing this pattern all day. You can be like, okay, well I can just go from there.
Well, and you're still following the interval rules to go where you need to without having to focus so much on them. Like with the stringed instruments, the interval, the jumps are just so much more natural muscle memory when you're not dealing with that like white key, black key complication.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that at all. And again, that's another thing I like about playing fingerstyle is that I'm taking another layer of complication away where I'm not concerned about having a pick and, oh my God, like the pick drops out of my hand. Oh, what am I going to do now? And all that kind of stuff. If I'm playing fingerstyle and it's all fingerstyle. And if I want a pick-ish sound, like one thing is I can I'll just drag my fingernails across and I can get like a pick-ish sound where I can just go down with, four different fingernails, and on the way back I just come up with the thumb. We've talked about it a couple times, but it's just kind of like
Now let me ask you, the fret dots, you do calibrate yourself to those though, right? Like
a lot of times, yeah. Like knowing what key I'm in, like somebody says.
If you know you're tuned, if you're in this tuning on your guitar, where you start with those dots is strategic.
Yeah, like if I'm gonna start here, this is on the 2nd fattest string on the 7th fret, I know that's a B. So if somebody wants to play in B, I know that's there. And I also know that the low B is that open fat string. So I would usually play based, thinking about this as my landing, but knowing that I can always get down there if I want to. And that's where it's nice to have that low B. And that's where you don't have that on a 4-string bass. You don't have that low B at all. So you'd be playing, if you're playing in B, you can't get lower than that 7th fret, or you can play it at the 2nd fret on the next string, which is over here.
Well, and that's why it's nice. It's nice not to just have that muscle memory to scale up and down, but also to have that identification to know, like, oh, I want to hit a B on this instrument. It's right here.
Yep. And same thing if I wanted to hit, on one of the other strings, like on that G string.
Yeah, what's the G spot?
On the G string, you'd be playing at the 4th fret, and that would be the octave of playing on the 2nd fret from this other. I'm all the way out of frame here, but
I like the double neck view.
Yeah,
like I said, it feels like you have a double-headed guitar. if you do it just right, it's like, oh my God, he's from Cheap Trick.
What I was trying to do is I was trying to get it a little bit further so I could get like the fretting hand this way in the one, and then the whole neck in the other. But I keep getting to where I can like just barely get out there. Like this is down to the 2nd fret here, and you can still see where my hand is. That's good. But I'm kind of shifted. But by hitting any two that are 2 strings away and 2 frets away and 2 strings down, that's going to be an octave. And when I'm picking on this side, I'm just keeping this is like the ring at the index going back and forth. And those get you the same note, and that's whether that's that note.
Another way to create tension.
Yep. And that's moving chromatically. You can just go one by one, or if you want to move in a scale.
Cracker in the house.
Crack-a-lacka. What's up, sucker? And the strap came off the bass. No good. I do have to get a better. I used a locking strap locks, I guess, on the guitar, but I don't have those on the bass. So I do have to watch that sometimes. But I do like the fact that the strap has give to it. No, well, only when I'm standing up do I have to worry about it. But when it's on there, it is good that it has some give to it, so that it's like the bass is really heavy. So like if it's in my lap, it's no problem. But if I'm standing up, like if it was one of those like thin straps and there's no give to it, it would start cutting in eventually if you're standing up trying to play with it. Just because that 5 string is heavier.
You're 6'7".
6'6", very definitely. I'm big. The bass is big, but yes, usually like 6'8" even sometimes with the shoes. So it depends what Yeah. Not intentionally wearing heels or anything, but just having shoes on that have a solid heel or whatever. I am even taller than I usually am.
Shit, if you're wearing Timberlands and shit like that, you're practically 7 feet
Yep.
tall.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have those in the car for like when there's snow and all that. And then like when I have to get from the apartment to the car, like if I don't know it's going to snow and those are in the car and I'm up here, I'm like, shit. Bad planning. I should have had those up in here.
Throw the cowboy hat in there and you're 7.5 feet.
We gave the cowboy hat back. Actually, it found its way home to Christian in the country band in let's see which that was the Eboro Bandits that we got him his hat back. That was again the gig where he lost it or left it was apparently the gig that we had that they had the mechanical bull in the one room, and it was kind of like I thought it was gonna be like a wedding, fancy everything, but it was more of like a cowboy theme everything. So it was, and they had just 100 cowboy hats around at the place. Some of them were like light up, LED lights in the hats and all that. So it was a very a cool event, a very fun event. At the end of the night, that hat just kind of showed up magically. It was sitting there at the end of the night. We were like, oh, save that, because it was a very nice hat. Yeah.
I didn't think you could pull off a cowboy hat, but you did.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, you had to, you never know until you try. So, and then you see if it actually works. But that's also, there's always the possibility. I'd be happy to play in a country band. And one of the big things there is playing whatever, another thing about the stringed instruments being nice and easy or being easier is anytime you want to rock a root note and a 5, like the five below it is going to be the string below it on the same fret. So if I'm playing whatever this is, right, this is the 5th fret over here, so this would be a D, 5th fret on the A string, and if I'm going to play the 5th, it would be on the 5th fret on the E string, so it would be. And then you learn that walk.
That's a lot of country right there.
And if you just figure out how to do like something like that. Anything like that, and then no matter where you are, it doesn't matter. If it's going to be in this key instead. And it's always the same pattern, and that's what's good about the stringed instrument. Again, wherever you're going, it's the same thing. If you can figure it out here, you can figure it out somewhere else.
Well, how's your banjo skills? Or
never
fiddle?
tried. I do actually have a banjo pick, like one of those sideways picks that you put on for your thumb. I do have one over there because I wanted to try that at some point, figuring that would help for the 5-string bass.
A country band, a serious one, definitely got to have a banjo. And
oh yeah, I mean,
an
in
occasional
one case,
fiddle in country is kind of a must.
With a couple of different country bands I've seen recently, they had a fiddle player who played. The one guy was a fiddle player who played the fiddle, the guitar, and the saxophone. The other one was he was really good. Another one played fiddle, guitar, and I think it was fiddle, guitar, and banjo. The lead singer for the band plays the acoustic guitar and harmonica, and he's got a mandolin and a ukulele on the stand as well. So his stand just has all the little string instruments like hanging off of it.
Out the mandolin. Now you got some folk classical.
Yeah. And he uses it for leads, like little leads and little comping in the middle. It's a really nice sound to add into all the rest of what's going on with that. So it does make a nice mix there. And that's usually the Eboro Bandits that have that whole mix going on there. But again, whether a lot of the country stuff is whether it's just the root and 5 going back and forth. The other one, that would be the root with the 5 below. If you wanted to go with the root and the 5 above, it's going to be the next string down and 2 frets over. So wherever you are, it's just the next string down and 2 frets over. And you want to get fancy, you go from one of those 5s to the other. So you go, and you can work that into all kinds of different grooves, like that we did for Valerie. And that's not the right key for Valerie, but that's kind of just going back and forth between those two, and that's all you're doing there is the root, the 5 above, and the 5 below. Just by going back and forth between those two, and again knowing that shape, now it doesn't matter. Somebody says, "Oh, instead of that key, let's play it in B." Well, okay, well we could just we'll play it, somewhere different. So like in this case, probably up here. But it's just a matter of whatever key they want to play it in. You can just find the root note, and then it's going to be that same pattern you already learned, and that's one of the key things about stringed instruments that I really like is that it does translate very well. And again, compared to keyboard, it translates a lot better.
There's 2 spots with double dots.
Depends on the instrument. With this one, my double dots here are the 12th fret. There would be another set at the 24th fret, which would be down here. We were talking about that before, where the one I have at the studio is a 24 fret 5-string bass, and it does have the double dots down into here. So basically think of these as, think of this as going back to 0 again. So these would be the 3, 5, and 7. And so this ends at 8. So that last one that you see there is going to be the same sound as the 8th fret. Because it's basically taking the same...
and 12 frets up from open is an octave, right?
Yep, and that's what this first one is. And that's a couple different songs.
For guitarists and bassists, you're looking for that pattern to establish your instrument, the same way I look at the black-white relations and 3-2.
Yep. Once we find the root note anywhere, we know that the major third's always going to be the same place. And if it's a minor thing, it's always going to be that same thing. Like the major's always going to be that 1-3-5 shape, and the minor's always going to be the 1-3-4 for those first 3 notes. That's the difference between the major and the minor for the third, at least. And then on the next string up, if it's major.
And looking at your fingers here, I see the intervals better on a fretboard than I see them on the keyboard. I really do.
Yeah. And this is up at the 7th fret, so this is already where they're getting closer together. So it's easier to play. Instead of if I was playing at the 2nd fret down here, for example, I'd be stretching further like this, where it might make it easier to see, but it's a little less comfortable. So if I was doing that same 1-3-5 thing, it's much more of a stretch because I'm trying to get up to here from down here.
Well, and I appreciate the half step when I'm seeing it here. Whereas the half steps on the keyboard, you're thinking like, is it a white key? Is it a black key?
He was also talking about doing trills on those that are close together. So let's say in the minor, one thing about the minor positions that I like a lot is the first 3 notes are the same position as the second set of 3 notes, just a string higher. So you can do like up there and down here. And that's minor. And if you did it as major, that might sound like a song.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Hey, where did we go?
Yeah, and that's actually a good one for let's see, where was I? Is that where we went? So there we go. Yeah, so from there we went to, and that's where if you know that pattern, you can use that pattern for anything where you're going from that same root to the root to major, 3rd, 4th, and then 5th. Or actually, no, sorry, go from there to. Yeah, depends. It sounds right both ways,
When the
right?
saints go marching in.
Sorry.
Ange was singing that yesterday.
Something like that. But yeah, that's the way that works on the bass. And like I said, the biggest difference between this bass and the one at the studio over Joey's is the fact that it's got the 24 frets on that one and the 19 here, which again doesn't change much of what I can play, but it's just a lot of times when I'm doing those little, what I would call ambiguous slides, where I'm just sliding somewhere or anywhere, get stuck keys again.
Oh yeah, you broke ridiculous.
I fix it. I like things I can fix just by banging on them. Percussive maintenance. Better. Okay.
I've actually fixed computers that way.
Yes. Hey, I gotten to the point where I had fixed computers by percussive maintenance, but I'd also got to the point where I could fix computers by giving them a threatening look, where I just look at them like they know I'm going to go get the screwdriver if they don't behave, and they just immediately just started working. He's like, no, we're good. We're
Ange
good.
does that in reverse. She talks to it nice, and all of a sudden, it starts working for her.
He's like, oh, come on, baby. Don't give me a bad loving.
No, I never tried the please approach with the computer, but it works for her.
Well, the thing is, like, the computer basically needs to explain to me how you're having this problem, because, like, I can walk you through why you should be working, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, fine. I should be working. I'm going to work. Okay, fine.
Oh,
And
and
it just gives
especially
up.
when it's problems that come out of nowheres. Like I started today flipping on my new machine, and a USB port was dead. And it's the port that I had the hub, the stand plugged into, so the mouse, the keyboard, nothing was working. And
Yeah.
it turned out to be a port that just decided to stop working.
No good, man. And that's the thing. I mean, USBs, you know, things are plugged in all the time. We don't really think about them, but, you know, there's juice going when that's on.
Well, and the one that, you know, plugs into hubs and things works a little bit harder than the ones that don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I was saying is, you know, you got 18 hard drives on one of them.
Actually, that one
Definitely
surprisingly,
gonna.
every single USB port works and does work.
It does what it's supposed to.
Although if I can get some of these, now they got like 18 terabyte drives. It's not cheap yet, but getting there. 12 terabytes, $150.
Hell yeah.
I'd buy
Sign
that
me up.
for $1 or $2.
Hey, exactly. Ooh, so I know we were just looking at the neck of the bass there. Should we jump into the Scott's bass lessons?
Oh yeah, we still
critical
have-
critical articulations of funk bass.
Yeah, it's a good way to finish off.
Yeah. And again, love Scott's bass lessons, and he has a special guest on this one. And the two of them go back and forth, and they basically it's more or less of a conversation, but they're getting into a lot of what gets you the funky sound, in addition to just getting you a non-generic sound. Because we've talked about MIDI a bunch as well. So this is basically taking the performance and taking all the elements that you need to put into it other than the note selection. So this will be things like, you know, how you're fretting the notes, how you're attacking the notes, using the thumb, like all these different things. They kind of just break down all these and give examples of how to, you know, incorporate these ideas into your thing. Some good stuff. Scott's Bass Lessons, always good resource. And, you know, again, special guest on this video here as well.
At Divine Bass over on YouTube.
Yep. Tons of great videos there.
Dude, are you ready for the funk?
I'm always ready for the funk, dude. Always. Ian.
Dude, show me how to be funky. Show me how to be funky. Dude, show me the funky.
Funk. Check this out. It's really easy to play the correct notes.
Yes.
And for it to sound lame. Okay? So when you watch your greatest bass player, you know those bass players that you're nerding out over and you're like, oh, they're so good. Okay? They are not just playing the correct notes, because Ian right there was playing the correct notes.
Yeah, right. We had this. I worked on this too to get this right.
Let's hold hands and go on. Yeah,
Right.
Like, it was a struggle for Ian to play this, and myself as well. I went,
To play it with no articulation, right? To play it with no filth, no stank, and this has more.
and that's what we're going to show you how to do, because there's a bunch of different elements. There's actually, just wait, right there. 8,
9?
Don't go anywhere.
8.
There's 8 different things.
If you want more from your bass playing, we have something awesome for you. SBL's free bass crash courses. Theory, technique, soloing, and fretboard knowledge, bite-sized, tons of value, and absolutely free. Link is right here and in the description. Let's get back to it.
So what's the first thing, Ian?
Space, right?
Yes.
So we're thinking about, instead of just playing, so that's with no articulation to the best of my ability. And then how about we just put a little bit of space somewhere, like maybe at the ends of the phrases.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're going, right? It's
Yeah.
not.
Right.
It's
Dynamics.
daylights in there,
And a dynamic pop.
and that dynamic pop. So there's the space, and there's the dynamics as well.
Yes.
Now we're going to add in some slides.
Oh, thank God.
The slides. This is the juice,
Yeah.
right? It's the juice that we're on.
Oh, yes.
There's 2 slides there. Into the first. Take it. Whoa.
That's all of them. Maybe too many, right? How about this?
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice. I'm going to try and do it.
You had it. That's it. One more time.
Nice.
It's actually really difficult. Like, Scott has a different way of making a bass line feel funky or filthy or stanky than I do, right? And it's actually really cool to try to cop somebody else's thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Because we all develop our own vocabulary, and you have this just amazing way to like move notes around, and I'm like, oh, I'm trying to do that, right? And so it's so fun to hear you try to come to me as well, right? And because that's just what gives you the different feeling and vocabulary and style in your bass playing.
Cool. So next up, we've got hammer-ons.
Ah, cool.
Throw in 1.
Okay, let's see. What
Give
about?
me one. What is a hammer-on? Hang
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
What is a hammer-on?
A hammer-on is just when you take a note and you articulate one time with your plucking hand, and then with your fretting hand, you hammer on, and you actually do it with all fingers down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do it with just the finger I'm using. But in this case, let's see, where can we put a hammer on?
We do it on the first one? Like,
Ooh, yeah.
instant juice.
Yeah, you're right. And how about there again? Like,
Ooh.
yeah, play that.
And we're kind of doing this sort of like hammer-on where it's kind of like, it's like a, like a,
Yeah.
yeah? It doesn't need to be like this. You could go, yeah?
Yeah, you could make it a rhythm. That's cool. I like that.
That's a bit different.
Yeah, try it again. One more time for me. I like that.
And just there, like, we both started doing this actually, and we didn't call it out when it started happening.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
actually sliding down as well.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's fun.
Now, she puts on some wiggles and stings.
Wiggles, squiggles,
Oh,
stings.
wiggles, a squiggle, a stinger.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
sting. And you'll have heard people do this. It kind of comes from the synth kind of world, doesn't it?
For sure.
Where they'll have these little vibrato wheels.
The mod wheel.
The mod wheel,
Yeah.
yeah.
Woo. And show them. How are you getting that to happen? But bagadagoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going.
Right.
And hey, this is another one as well that I'm going to throw in there. So maybe it was 9 pull-offs as well. So what I'm doing is and then I'm pulling on. This is the opposite of a hammer on, right? Hammer on, play 1, get 2.
Yep.
Pull off, play 1, also get 2. But you're pulling down like this.
Yeah.
And there I'm going. I'm sliding back and forward.
And it's so fast. You do not spend much time on that half step above. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Yeah, do it again. That's a lot of sauce, dude. Yeah, and then, you know, you can use this sauce, think of it really, honestly, like sauce or seasoning.
Yeah,
right?
seasoning.
For a dish.
Sauce, dude.
For a
We were
delicious
talking
meal.
about this yesterday.
No. Yeah, it's like, is mustard a sauce? Is
it?
mayo a sauce, Jim?
Is it?
It's a condiment.
Well, that's true. You wouldn't say mustard sauce, would you?
Red sauce?
Mmm.
Brown
It's
sauce?
a misnomer. They're all condiments.
Daddy's or HP?
HP. I'm not an animal.
Give us a shout in the comments if you know what the heck I'm talking about. Daddy's or HP, and let us know what you would go for.
Somebody in the UK said to me, you want sauce on that? I said, I don't know. And they said, well, red or brown? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And then what did she do?
And then she said, well, red, ketchup. And I said, oh, okay, got it. We don't call ketchup red, but it is red. I get it. Now I get it. Sure. She's like, or brown. And I'm like, I don't know what brown is. She said, stick out your finger. And I said, okay. And I did. And she said, put out your pinky. And then she squirted brown sauce on my pinky and stuffed it in my mouth. And she said, that's brown. And I said, I guess I'm having brown sauce.
Amazing. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're adding on the sauce here, right? And then we kind of been leaning into this as well. Like, if you pluck kind of hard, it kind of comes under, I guess, the sort of like dynamics category.
Yeah.
If you wanted to be super nerdy about it. But if you really dig in hard, you can get like a real bark, a real kind of rasp. So it's not just. It's.
Right. And I like how you have control over that, though, because you're not rasping all of them.
No,
You're
at all,
really
yeah,
choosing which ones you want to play.
Also, as well, when I'm playing that, if you play it down here near the bridge to get that real raspy sound, it's not really the vibe I'm after. Because it's like, it barks for sure.
But it doesn't snap.
But it doesn't like, yeah.
Yeah.
Not this. It needs to be like round the neck here. Yeah. Yeah. And we've got two more actually.
Yeah.
So two more. First of all is muting, right? So we've been playing all of this with our, with no muting really. This hand here been, picking all of the notes, other than the hammer-ons and the slides and stuff like that, and the pull-offs. And this note we've just been kind of really clean. But you can do this thing called muting, and you can do it with you can do it with both hands, right? Your plucking hand or your fretting hand. With the plucking hand, generally it's called a palm mute, right? So what you do is you do a karate. Alan's like doing this. Sorry, Alan. Karate chop, boom, like this. So instead of this,
Ooh, yeah.
instead of, I've got, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So what I'm doing there is I'm like actually pulling away from the bass as well. I've got I'm palm muting for the most part. Woo. Yeah, so like pulling away or with my thumb, right?
That feels great. What else can we do? What else can we do?
Oh, yeah, the pick. good. So good. So what we're doing there with the pick is we've got this. So it's like a constant 16th thing going on, and then by applying pressure, that's how you get the notes. Oh yeah. Slap it as well, yeah.
Really, all there, we're making our thumb like a pick, right?
Are you doing all pick, all thumb there? Are you doing all pick, all thumb there?
What I'm doing is I'm just making my thumb like a pick. Just how I would do this with a pick. I'm making my thumb, same thing.
And then finally, on top of all of that, I think we've blown our 9, by the way.
Yeah, we
I
have.
think we've blown the 9.
Yes.
On top of all of that, you've got ghost notes as well.
Yeah.
So a ghost note is where or dead notes, which is where you pluck a string, but you actually don't sound a note. Okay? So an example of this just on one string would be
2 ghosts,
yeah,
2 notes.
2 ghosts, 2 notes. Do you want to show them how to actually get it in the... Oh.
And the ghost note thing, I really like it when it's a little faster, almost in like 16th note funk territory. So if we played that riff just a little faster, like
Yeah, go for it.
2, a 1, 2, 3.
Are you on the bridge pickup there as well?
I'm not. I'm on the neck pickup,
Oh,
but
right,
I'm
okay.
playing back by the bridge
Got it.
to get just a little
it's a bit
tighter feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, can we take him back and show him what it was like in the beginning?
Yeah, go for it, dude. I was trying to play it before his video. It's quite
Let's see.
challenging,
I think
isn't
it was like
Yeah.
this.
Oh yeah. You know, like, just to show, and maybe somebody's already written this in the comments, you know, there's always room for like a really super simple bass line.
Of course.
Of course, right?
Yes.
You know, one that jumps to mind, Carol K. I'm not quite sure what key it was in.
That's a cool bass line. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like,
It
she's
would have been
not good.
crazy to fill that full of. But I'm kind of feeling that. Yeah, it's honestly about your taste. It's about knowing when it's appropriate, right, to play. And when it's appropriate to play softer, maybe with just some 1 or 2 aspects. But to make those choices, in order to make those choices, you have to have the vocabulary, which means you have to go, your term, beast mode.
You've got to go beast mode, yeah.
That's what was difficult about trying to get this down without any articulation. Clean, the same dynamic, kind of like mezzo piano, boring, boring tempo, boring dynamic, just flat. Like bass playing at about a 4.
Yeah,
Huh. But sometimes that is the vibe for the tune. But you want to have the horsepower, right? You want to have the ability in the tank, the gas in the tank.
The turbo.
Yeah, to turn it on when you need to.
Absolutely.
Hey, do you know the guy that invented the Pringles packet? When he died, he had his ashes put in the Pringle packet, and he was actually buried in the Pringle packet.
In the Pringle packet. That's the way that works. Scott's Bass Lessons. Always an excellent resource. Tons of good stuff there, tons of good videos. Whether there's, whether you want charts, whether you want actual lessons, whether, again, ones like that I really like because it was more of a conversation where they're both kind of getting into it and, going back and forth with ideas on how to get things across.
Yeah, I love how they jammed with each other off that.
And that is the way to jam with two basses. Mm-hmm.
That was some Grateful Dead style jamming that they were doing, huh?
Being free with it, just kind of working around the ideas of, and in this case, just, working the different articulations in. And sometimes, you can put in too many, like, at certain points you're doing too much, putting like a duka waka taka on every single thing. That could be a little too much. Having it worked into where you're maybe just using it, on the 2 and the 4, for example, or wherever, you're trying to figure out the spot in the song where it's most useful as opposed to using it too much. Because again, spices, you don't want to jam the thing with chili powder like until it's like red and like too much in there. It's like, no, a little bit,
Unless you like that much.
Unless you like that much, yeah. Certain styles too, like in the funk, there's going to be a lot of funky stuff in the funk. So, to say that, somebody uses too much spice, that's, subjective. Somebody else would think that's just the right amount.
He wondered about some of the same, like the fingering location. And I was wondering about one thing. That guy had some kind of guard over the top of the strings. What is that? Is that
you see that on? You'll see that on a Rickenbacker bass. It's basically a metal guard that's over the one pickup. So there's a pickup right under that, and that goes over the top. And to me, it's awkward because that's near where I tend to want to hit the strings.
I would imagine it would be awkward for certain styles.
But if I had that style of a bass, I would get accustomed to playing in different areas. Like I would play behind there, more comfortably, like right between that and the other pickup, or behind that if I want that far away, or in a box kind of a sound, and more aggressively up on the neck.
Is it shielding the pickup or doing something to?
I haven't really gotten a clear idea of exactly what it is. It might just be decorative. I know that there were people when there was one on the end of a bass.
I hope it's more than decorative, because I would see a lot of basses like, don't put that on.
Or some would even just take it off, yeah. But there's also with some, like on the Rickenbacker, they would have, I think, the one cover on the front, and there was also like a metal plate, like a shovel plate on, down towards the ends of the strings, and that would be where some of them would put a piece of foam tucked under that metal piece on top of the strings to get that muting sound that he was getting with the karate chop of the hand. Like karate chopping across the strings is the other way to accomplish the same sound. And to me, I'd much rather do it with the hand like that. And on the 5-string, I've just gotten accustomed to, keeping the strings muted. And again, at the beginning, I couldn't really figure out how to get the strings muted or how to get the mechanics worked out for getting everything all sped up and working at speed and managing to mute all the strings and all that. But eventually, it just kind of comes to you as you're doing it more and more. And it's not easy to describe how to do it, but just getting used to having all the strings under control. And a lot of times it is just, I have a 5-string bass and I have 5 fingers in my right hand, so I can just keep, one finger on each string. And as long as I don't have to be going digga 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 digga, and if I do, that's going to use 2 of my fingers. So I just have to figure out how to mute the other 4 strings with 3 fingers, and that's not hard either because I can just have 1 finger in between 2, keeping those 2 both quiet, and then the other ones get 1 each.
You were built perfect for a 5-string.
Yeah. And if it was a 6-string, it wouldn't be a big deal either because that would just be, again, I would probably not be using the fattest string as much, so that would just be more keeping then the palm of the picking hand. Could just use that as like a palm rest where you're just in contact with that string most of the time while you're doing everything else. And then it's, it's like me ignoring the fifth string and just using 4 of them. If somebody was adjusting from a 4-string bass, I would tell them just use that fattest string as a thumb rest and use the bass as a 4-string bass, because those other 4 strings are a 4-string bass that you're used to, E, A, D, and G. And then this one that you're using as a thumb rest is a low B that you can just continue your patterns down onto that string and get comfortable with utilizing that, especially for keys like if you want to play in D. Normally you would have to be up at the 5th fret on the A string or all the way up at the 10th fret on the E string, but in this case you could play at the 3rd fret, so you get that nice beefy sound because you're on the B string on the 3rd fret, and that's a little lower than most people would get unless they're tuned down on their guitar to a D or below.
Does Scott's site have different lessons for 5-stringers or 4-stringers?
I believe he's had several videos.
6-stringers, I mean the fanciest of basses.
I think he had more videos talking about reasons why people hate a 5-string or reasons why people love a 5-string, or kind of, getting on both sides of the issue to kind of talk about it a little bit, because it's not a right or a wrong thing. There's no, nobody should be told they shouldn't have a 5-string or that they absolutely should have a 5-string. I tend towards the everybody should have a 5-string, just because not to be intimidated by the 5-string, to not be locked into a 4-string. At the same time, I see people like Victor Wooten and what he does on a 4-string, or Jaco, and what they do on a 4-string, and it's like, I mean, you can do it all on a 4-string, but just understanding the 5-string means that you would also be open to a 5-string, 6-string, 7-string, the only difference being the thickness of the neck and being able to handle the weight and things like that when you get to those kinds of instruments.
Or the range that you get. To me, I equate it to like the difference between an 88 key, 76, 61, what are those, 42. I don't know the little ones because I don't. I would either buy a 88, pretty much at this point for main keyboards, has to be an 88.
I would say the small ones, like that little Axiom, that's probably a 25. Because it looks like two full octaves from C to C. So you get that extra C at the end for the 25th.
And that's fine for a phrasing keyboard.
Exactly.
Like you just transpose, you're working in melodies and parts, but your main, like, axe, your main gear, has to have the versatility that you're going to play across the entire range.
This one that I use for that's the Casio. That's 61 touch response. So it does have the depending on how hard you hit, you definitely get a good response out of it.
And what patch you're playing. Because I don't need an 88 key for a synth patch or something like that. A lot of times I'm playing in a certain area with certain sounds. But piano is something where, I'll be pounding on the bottom end of the piano, and I don't really go high as much, but for the most part, C2-ish, C1-ish gets used.
Space chorus on the lowest note. It's way down there. Pads.
Yeah, give us something nice and spacey. That'll take us out. That was some good stuff tonight.
Warm pads.
Yeah, when you have nice choirs like that, those are the chords you want to go to. The glorious chords.
The warm pads.
Thank you for tuning in.
We'll catch everybody next week. Always a pleasure. Here on Talking Shh. IT with Glenn and Tony.
You took them out with the gospel.
A little bit, yep. Little warm pads to put everybody to sleep. Little night-night.
Thanks for the jam, everyone.
Yep. We'll catch you guys next time. Little ambient noise, yeah?
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Now for me that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out. Kind of.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice 40. I didn't even realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.